Superman's journey through the worlds. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26. This is a shame for the martial arts industry. Physical fitness can be trained, and skills and routines can also be practiced, but speed is not easy to practice. The speed of martial arts is not the kind of speed that is just hitting randomly, and you can't even see it clearly or understand it, but the speed that is methodical and targets the enemy's weaknesses. It is important to be able to adapt to circumstances, see the flaws, and react instantly. There is no posture in the world that can protect all the weaknesses of the body and facing a fast opponent. As long as there are flaws and being attacked first, then failure is almost inevitable. Just like Wu Jiui facing Zilin, even when he was defeated in the last one, he didn't have time to change his posture. The martial arts masters under the stage saw the problem, but they couldn't solve it at all. They can urgently come up with a routine to deal with the technical issues, but this kind of method that is not about skills, but simply using speed to suppress people, can't be dealt with. They now realize the seriousness of the problem. This fierce exchange meeting may become a mess and make everyone lose face, but it is too late to stop it. Lincoln would not agree, nor would the Baghuas Hang and Synopsis fighters who had already tried it on stage. Zheng Shanao would not agree either. So, with everyone's eyes filled with grief, one martial arts apprentice after another went on stage and fell down one after another. Skills, routines, none of them. Zilin had only one way to win, which was to hit these martial arts apprentices in the stomach hard at a speed that exceeded their reaction limit, and then step back a few steps to watch them being carried away. The muffled bang sounded like firecrackers, and the air stirred up by the shock wave even messed up the hair of the martial arts masters in front. But no one cared about these things at this time. Everyone just stared at Lincoln, staring at Lincoln intently, as if they wanted to see how he taught the roadside tea girl to be what she is now. Anger, jealousy, and greed were born in their hearts. They wanted Lincoln's method very much, even more than when they wanted to become a true disciple. Lincoln felt the eyes of those people behind him that seemed to want to bite him, but he didn't care. They were just a bunch of chickens and pottery dogs practicing martial arts. Since he arrived, the times have changed. The result of the exchange meeting was no longer in suspense. With just the speed of crushing, Zilin's existence was already a boss that no one could deal with. If you add strength, endurance, and resistance to blows, even if you bring up the owners of the gyms under the stage, the result is only one: defeat. They came in high spirits and left in disgrace. This is the truest portrayal of the Xianjin Martial Arts Alliance. Except for Zheng Shanao's martial arts, none of the martial arts gyms that came to the scene had a good ending in Lincoln's hands. 3 means 3. No matter what they learned, each martial arts gym had to carry 3 people out when they left. Only the winner could leave standing from the main door. Outside the exchange meeting, seeing the owner of the Baghuas Hang martial arts gym carrying 3 apprentices away with all the people, the Republic of China spectators waiting to watch the show showed a hint of surprise in their eyes. Look, isn't that Master Zhao of Baghuas Hang? Why are his disciples being carried out? Did he lose? Are you stupid? Just look at Master Zhao's face and you know he must be in trouble. You'd better keep your voice down, otherwise he will bear a grudge against you. What am I afraid of? Can a Baghuas Hang master cover the sky with one hand in Xianjin City? It seems that there are more than just Baghuas Hang. A melon eater with melon seeds carved on his face pointed at the gate again. The Synopsis people have also come out, and they are also carrying 3 disciples. This posture is a bit wrong. Look, they are coming out again. Is this Badger-kun? The Badger-kun people are lying down too. Isn't Badger-kun the most powerful? Who can knock them down? One after another, the masters of martial arts schools left the gate with their disciples. Gradually, the spectators at the door stopped talking. Originally, they were happy to watch the fun, but now it's the same. Except for the 20th martial arts school newly opened in Lincoln, 18 out of the 19 martial arts schools have people carrying the land out. The only martial arts school that was not carried was the one under Zheng Shanyao's name, because they did not bring any disciples to challenge. In other words, out of the 19 martial arts schools that exchanged ideas, the one who could finally walk out of the gate standing was the disciple of Lincoln, the newly opened martial arts school. Everyone found it a little unbelievable, but seeing the gloomy faces of the school owners, no one dared to step forward to inquire. It was not until a few days later that more news came out from the mouths of the servants. Have you heard? At the martial arts exchange meeting that day, 18 schools fought against one, in a round-robin battle, with each school sending out 3 people to fight against the newly opened martial arts school, but they were directly defeated. More than that, the newly opened martial arts school even only sent 1 person, who fought 54, and they actually won. I heard that the one who fought 54 was a woman. No matter which school the opponents were from, she knocked them down one by one with 1 palm. How is that possible? A woman? Do women have that kind of physical strength? And 1 palm to 1? Have you read too many comic books? Really? I'm a dog if I lie. The man was anxious. I heard that it was not just a woman. It is said that she has only joined Master Lin's martial arts school for 3 months. What is it called? She is a step to the sky. What bullshit. Practicing martial arts for 3 months to beat those who practiced martial arts for 3 years. That's not so outrageous in novels. If you say she is cultivating immortality, I would believe it. That's right. As the saying goes, good news doesn't travel far, but bad news travels far and wide. Being defeated by 54 people at the exchange meeting was the worst news for the people in the Martial Arts School Alliance. They had tried their best to stop the spread of the news, but in just 3 days, the whole of Xianjin still knew the news of the martial arts defeat. It is foreseeable that this day will become a great legend, and everyone will remember the fact that the 18 martial arts schools in Xianjin were destroyed by 1 martial arts school. That is, on the day when the news spread throughout Xianjin, the sound of slapping the table came from all the 18 martial arts schools, and the masters of each martial arts school were venting their anger. Angry. In short, very angry. But facing the countless mouths in Xianjin, the news is already a fact that cannot be stopped. Lincoln's martial arts school became famous with the exchange meeting. Now everyone in Xianjin knows it. Correspondingly, the 18 martial arts schools as the background are also well known. Although the requirements for accepting disciples in Lincoln's martial arts school are extremely strict, for a time, there are still people from all over the country who come to the door. In contrast, the 18 martial arts schools are deserted. The martial arts school teaches martial arts, and if someone has been beaten through 18 times, what else can we talk about? No one wants to go to such a martial arts school. Their financial resources were cut off, and their faces were humiliated. This was a great humiliation. The anger of the 18 martial arts schools towards Lincoln had reached its peak. Chapter 27. The rule I don't want to follow is the toilet paper. This is too much. This is too much. In a martial arts hall, a master slammed the table with a bang, his face full of anger. Under the main seat, all the disciples looked at each other, and no one dared to stand up and speak. After a while, it seemed that the anger in his heart had subsided a little. The master's dissatisfied eyes swept over the apprentices in the hall, and he stood up and walked out. I will be out for a while. You practice martial arts well. I don't want something like this to happen again next time. Looking at the masters gradually receding back, the apprentices were also full of resentment. The apprentices in the martial arts hall paid a lot of money to learn martial arts, and everyone wanted to learn something useful, not just fancy things. In the past, because all the martial arts halls in Xianjin taught fancy things, there was no comparison, and no comparison could be made. But now Lincoln has come. It was just an exchange meeting, and the comparison came out immediately. The apprentices naturally didn't think that Zilin was more talented than them, but it was a fact that she couldn't beat Zilin in 3 months out of 3 years. As a result, their resentment was transferred to the master of the martial arts school. They paid money to learn martial arts, and they paid real money, but what they learned was just a fake trick. How could they calm down? They didn't say anything now, just because their tuition was still in the hands of the martial arts school, and they didn't want to tear their faces apart without leaving any room for negotiation. But if this resentment continued to accumulate, it was hard to say what would happen next. On the other side, the owners of the martial arts schools had gathered together again. Brother Zheng, this can't go on. A master looked at Zheng Shanao, who was sitting in the main seat, and said that Lin broke the rules. If he keeps moving like this, all the 19 martial arts schools in Xianjin will have to be closed. This won't do. Zheng Shanao didn't say anything, but just looked outside the door. The owners were confused and looked at the door, and then saw Lincoln walking in from outside with a sullen face. Rules? What rules? Come and tell me. You. The faces of the museum owners changed drastically. Why are you here? Why can't I be here? Lincoln laughed. Come to think of it, I'm also a museum owner in Xianjin. Why can't I join your group of people in the meeting? The museum owners looked at each other, and then looked at Zheng Shanao at the same time. None of them would leak the news, so in this case, it could only be Zheng Shanao. Thinking of this, the eyes of the museum owners looking at Zheng Shanao were also a little strange. They were angry with Zheng Shanao in their hearts, but they didn't show it on their faces. They just stood up and flexed their sleeves. We have nothing to talk about with you. Really? Lincoln didn't care. He sat on the chair, took a sip of tea, and then chuckled. But I have something to talk to you about. Forget it. There's nothing to talk about with you. The owner of the first hall snorted coldly, and then he clasped his fist slightly to Zheng Shanao. Brother Zheng, we respect you, but you didn't do it right. After that, the group of 18 people took the lead and walked out of the door, not taking Lincoln seriously at all. As the saying goes, the law does not punish the masses. What they thought in their hearts was that there were 18 people on their side, and even if Lincoln had 8 courage, he would not dare to do anything. If it were anyone else, their ideas would be correct, except that they met Lincoln this time. Just as the group was about to step out of the door, they heard a thump from behind, followed by Lincoln's unhurried voice. Ladies and gentlemen, I told you, I want to talk to you. Talk? Are you qualified? The leader, Master Zhao, sneered, but when he turned around, he was horrified to see a golden light appearing in Lincoln's pupils. The buzzing sound echoed in the room, and in an instant, golden chains shuttled out from the void behind Lincoln, and in just a moment, the entire room was completely blocked. An inexplicable breath echoed in the room, like the divine advent that only existed in legends. Looking at the golden light that enveloped the entire room, Zheng Shanao's eyes showed a hint of arrogance and desire, but in the eyes of the 18 people, this golden light was not sacred, but fear. They looked at Lincoln with fear in their eyes, and their fingers pointing at Lincoln trembled, and they couldn't say a word for a long time. Okay, now we can't have a good chat. Lincoln put down the teacup in his hand nonchalantly, and looked at the 18 people in front of him with a half smile. You have 2 choices now. First, kneel on the ground, and listen to me. Second, have some backbone. I will send you to see your ancestors. Choose. The golden chains shuttled all over his body, and everyone was shocked and angry. The old owner with a beard looked at Lincoln angrily. You don't follow the rules. Rules? Lincoln sneered. I was going to talk to you about the rules, but unfortunately, you broke the rules. Who can you blame for this? You want to do it on the first day, so you can't blame me for doing it on the 15th. As he said, he lightly tapped his fingers, and the chains incarnated by magic moved instantly, blocking the old owner from all directions. Hands, feet, scapula, only heard the sound of flesh and blood tearing. The seemingly illusory chains were sharper than the sharpest knife, and pierced him in an instant. Then Lincoln's face showed a hint of coldness, and he clenched his palms. The chain tightened, and there was a tearing sound. In front of the other 17 gym owners, the gym owner who dared to speak out, because of his age, was torn apart alive. The blood flowed on the expensive floor, causing Zheng Shanao's face to twitch. He thought of the astronomical expenses for repairing his yard, killing in public, and killing in a way that no one could understand. Everyone was stunned. There are many reasons why people are fearless, but the most common one is that they think the other party dares not. The 18 gym owners thought that Lincoln would not dare to kill people at this time and place. but Lincoln did it, and when the first person died, everyone calmed down. They looked at the body on the ground without saying a word, and drops of cold sweat slid down their foreheads. Okay, this unknown Jamona is very strong-willed. I will help him, and send him to meet his great master. Also, Mr. Zeng, please announce after you go out, that the inheritance of this martial arts gym must be cut off. Next, let me see how hard the bones of all of you martial artists are. I'll give you time. Just 3 counts, 32-inch boom. Before Lincoln could finish, there was a boom, and a Jamona in the crowd knelt down with tears streaming down his face. My family has been passed down for 2 or 3 generations, and it can't be cut off here. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28. Times have changed. If it were in the past, they would have denounced this act of betrayal, but not now. The chains that shuttled around the room clattered, like the soul-catching chains in the hands of the black and white impermanents. The numbers that kept counting down were also so cold, as if announcing how much life they had left. The invisible and heavy pressure pressed on their hearts, and their knees bent unconsciously. People's bones can be very hard, but most people are just ordinary people. Those who practice martial arts more than ordinary people often only have a strong physique and good skills. Apart from that, there is no difference. It is hard to say whether there are hard bones in the whole city of Xianjin, but it is certain that there are no hard bones in Xianjin's martial arts. Zheng Shanyao's apprentice Lin Ziwen has been learning martial arts under him for many years. There are few people in Xianjin's martial arts that he has not seen, but until he planned the warlords to enter the martial arts many years later, he claimed that he had never met even one person with backbone. From this, we can see what kind of virtue these martial arts masters who seem to have backbone are. Before the last number fell, the sound of kneeling sounded one after another, except for the martial arts Jamona who was killed by Lincoln to establish his authority. The other 17 Jamonas all knelt on the ground, and their reasons were surprisingly similar. The inheritance cannot be broken in their hands. This reason sounds high sounding, but whether they are afraid of death or afraid of breaking the inheritance, only they themselves know. When guns and laws came onto the stage of history, martial arts had already declined. After Lincoln brought magic to this world, everything had to show their respect in front of the extraordinary. The magic power converted from the sun, stellar power, can easily allow any human to have hundreds of years of life. By controlling the power of stars, the records in myths will become facts. The national martial arts in the novel are just in the novel. As for martial arts, they will be integrated into the system of magic in other forms, to contribute to those mages who are keen on close combat. The replacement of martial arts by magic is not tyranny and the extinction of inheritance. On the contrary, it is progress. There are 19 martial arts schools in Xianjin, and each of them has its own prejudices. They only teach fake styles, which is a deviation from martial arts. Before, Lincoln didn't care about it, because the changes of the times would sooner or later set off a huge wave that would drown them in the tide of the old times. But now they are gathered together to play dirty, so Lincoln will naturally accompany them. All around, golden chains are hovering like dragons. In front of him, a total of 17 people kneel in a straight line. Looking at the 17 owners who were unwilling and angry, Lincoln showed a playful smile on his face and looked at Zheng Shanao. If you ask me, this person is a mean person. Before, I spoke to him in a nice way, but he just didn't listen. He had to kneel on the ground, feeling hard and cold, so that his mind could be clear. Do you think this kind of person is very mean? The golden chains around him were intertwined and tangled, and everyone's face trembled a few times, gritted their teeth and nodded. Mean. How mean? Very mean. Once a person's bottom line is broken, he will become extraordinary and have no bottom line. For these owners, they have already knelt down, and it is nothing great to curse them a few more times. If they don't curse, if they die, then they will kneel in vain. It is not shameful to admit cowardice and give in. At least, looking at them who have been drained of their backbone, Lincoln no longer has the idea of killing them. However, the death penalty can be escaped, but the living crime is inevitable. Tell me, how are you, the famous martial arts masters in Cheyenne, going to deal with me? Tell me, so that I can be prepared if someone else wants to deal with me. The kneeling people looked at each other, then looked at the chain that kept moving, and finally spoke. Although they were all martial artists, they were not brainless people like Liu Anba. After a brief discussion, they came up with a wicked way, sneering. As for the sneering, it was also very special, the master-disciple relationship. They planned to buy off the big and small mouths in Cheyenne and spread rumors that Lincoln and Celine had an improper relationship between men and women. In this way, they would add the title of master and apprentice. They didn't need to do anything else. In this closed era, public opinion was enough to ruin the reputation of Lincoln's martial arts school. They didn't care what trouble this move would bring to Lincoln. All they wanted was that Lincoln's martial arts school would no longer receive apprentices, or in other words, it would not be able to receive a large number of apprentices. At that time, these dozen martial arts schools will be able to continue to earn money in Cheyenne in peace. So it's for money. After listening to everyone's narration, Lincoln couldn't help but sigh, and then looked at a few people. I originally thought that you were doing it for the name of face, backbone, inheritance, etc. But in the end, it was for those few taels of silver. Tut tut tut. Lincoln was amazed. In his playful eyes, even the thick-skinned old face of the several school owners lowered their heads with red faces. Some things are better not to be revealed. If they are revealed, it will really make people feel ashamed. But the shame at this time is often just an illusion. If they are given another chance, they will probably do similar things again, but they will just be more clean. Opening a martial arts school and making money can deceive people's hearts. To some extent, they have something in common with capitalists. Lincoln treated the shame of several people as a joke. After some teasing, the smile on Lincoln's face gradually faded, and he stretched out his finger again. Same as before, I'll give you two choices. The first choice, I think your conduct is not decent, and you don't deserve the title of master. From today on, after you leave this door, you should disband your martial arts schools. Don't let me hear that you are still in the martial arts business. As for those real kung fu that you cherish so much, and don't want to teach others, don't teach them in the future. Lincoln pointed to the chains in the air and said, these things will replace the status of martial arts in the future. You just wait to be swept into the garbage dump. The second choice is much simpler. After you leave this door, you can continue to open the martial arts school, but I will let my apprentices challenge you, the kind of life and death challenge. Starting with your apprentices, and then to your so-called true disciples, or those who have learned this martial art must go on the stage. As for your families, I won't touch them. Cheyenne is so big, there should be plenty of people willing to help you take care of your wife, children and the elderly who are powerless. Lincoln's voice was flat, and his white teeth looked cold, causing everyone to shiver all over. It is not a matter of choice to close the martial arts school and quit the martial arts industry in an unseemly way, or to die in the arena in an honorable way, and have all the property looted. There is no need to choose. Looking up at the golden chains in the sky that they cannot understand, all the owners know that the era of martial arts has passed and a new era has arrived. Thanks to Yazzie_ for the 100 points reward, and thanks to Aoyangshan Xio for the 500 points reward. Chapter 29, Diverting the Trouble. Each era has its own theme and background. The original theme and background of this world should be war and the rise of the country. In this chaotic world, all walks of life have sprung up like mushrooms after rain, presenting an alternative illusion of prosperity. But now it is different. Martial arts have no power to speak in front of machine guns, but magic does. The sun is high in the sky, and even if only 1/1000th of the power is borrowed, it is enough to change the pattern of the entire earth. Lincoln didn't plan to do this, but now he changed his mind. The golden chain that seemed to block the space was slowly lifted, and the ubiquitous energy pressure gradually faded, but the people kneeling on the ground did not dare to move. It was not until Lincoln waved his hand that they walked out of the door like a bereaved mother. Lincoln did not ask them to give an answer immediately, but this also eliminated the possibility of them being veiled. Action is the answer, either life or death. in the room. After watching several people leave, Zheng Shanao let out a long sigh of relief and looked at Lincoln. Master Lin, are you preparing for a big move? Yeah. Lincoln nodded calmly. Originally, I just wanted to travel in this world, but now it seems that learning skills, martial arts, and even literature cannot change this world. Fighting violence with violence is the best and simplest way. Zheng Shanao looked at Lincoln and pondered for a moment. Are you going to teach your skills to others? How many people are you going to accept? I haven't decided yet. Lincoln chuckled. Power is not good or bad, but people are. I have to make sure that those who gain power will not do evil, at least not now. I know some people in the dojo. Zheng Shanao pondered for a moment and said, in terms of fighting skills, they may not be better than martial artists, but those who can meditate in the mountains should not be too bad in character. Otherwise, I can help you contact them. When you give someone a gift, you must ask for something in return. Lincoln did not continue the topic, but looked at Zheng Shanao and smiled. You want to learn too? Zheng Shanao was slightly startled, then a hint of joy appeared in his eyes, and he nodded heavily. Yes. According to Lindsay Wen, Zheng Shanao was also a spineless person, but he had the weakness of focusing on reputation, and he was also an old man who didn't have many days left to live. These 2 points alone were enough to make him work for Lincoln wholeheartedly. Zheng Shanao must have the ability to sit firmly in the top position in Xianjin for many years. With him doing things, Lincoln would save a lot of trouble. At least he didn't need to worry about contacting many dodgers and sorting things out. In Xianjin City, the movement of the owners of a total of 18 martial arts halls could not be hidden from those who were interested. Since the exchange meeting that day, everyone in Xianjin City who had a little free time was watching the martial arts industry. There was no other reason. They didn't believe that people in the martial arts industry would suffer a big loss in silence, and wanted to see how the follow-up would develop. At this time, seeing the door of Zheng Shanao's mansion reopened, the people in Xianjin City immediately reacted. Look, they're all coming out. No, it seems like there's one person missing. I remember there were 18 people when we came. Why are there only 17 now? Where's the other person? Did you see him come out early? No, maybe he was left behind and came out later? I don't know, but the faces of several martial arts school owners don't look very good, and they're a little dirty. Did they fight inside? Who cares? Some people didn't care. I just want to know what they're going to do next. After hearing this, some people with good intentions joined in. If you ask me, that new martial artist is going to be in trouble. Everyone in Xianjin knows that the martial arts school alliance is domineering, and an outsider has offended them, so this matter won't end easily. Either his martial arts school will be closed down, or he can only watch and watch as he accidentally loses his life one day. Not that bad, right? Why not? Just watch. I don't believe it. If you don't believe it, then how about a gamble? If you win, I'll kneel on the ground and call you grandpa, and if you lose, I'll make $1. Dream on. A call of grandpa is worth $1. Give me $1 and I'll kneel down and call you grandpa. Public opinion cannot affect high-level officials. The people who really care about this matter are sitting in the magnificent room at this time. Lindsay Wen, a disciple under Zheng Shanao, was originally considered a martial artist, but since he became the adjutant of the governor of another province, he has called himself a military man in front of people. Zheng Shanao did not regard Lindsay Wen as his true disciple, which also caused some subtle emotional changes in Lindsay Wen's heart. Now as an era of chaos in the world, Lindsay Wen thought that the current martial arts model would not last long. If he wanted to continue to exist, the future was to integrate into the military. He had wanted to replace the martial arts in Xianjin for a while, but he had never found a suitable time and opportunity. But now, he seems to have seen a little opportunity, although this opportunity seems vague, so he can't see the truth behind the matter. If it were an ordinary person, he might need to weigh the risks and benefits, but Lindsay Wen was different. He knew people in the martial arts circle and had a high status. After pondering for a moment, Lindsay Wen glanced at the assistant beside him. I want to see Zhao Rong. You go and arrange it. Yes. The assistant nodded with a cold face and walked out the door. Adelin wants to see me. Zhao Rong looked at the assistant with a cold face. Did you say what it was? No. The assistant shook his head slightly, just said he wanted to see you. Although he didn't get a practical answer, Zhao Rong felt that this matter should be related to what happened recently, and the whole person couldn't help but fall silent. She was not considering whether to meet Lindsay Wen or not. Unless she wanted to offend the warlord, Lindsay Wen must be met. What she was thinking about now was whether to bring Lindsay Wen and even the warlord forces behind him in. People in their martial arts circle can only move iron tools at most, and they can't make a big climate, so they are in an absolutely suppressed position in front of Lincoln. But the warlords are different. Those people have guns and cannons. From pistols to rifles to artillery, the power controlled by the warlords is much greater than that of their martial arts. The people of their martial arts can't deal with Lincoln, that's because they are weak. If they were replaced by warlords with spears and artillery, Zhao Rong had a little intention in her heart while thinking. She admitted that the means displayed by Lincoln were indeed worthy of fear, but she didn't believe that anyone in the world could withstand the bombardment of spears and artillery. If she could do it more cleanly, maybe she could provoke a head-on conflict between the warlord and Lincoln, while keeping herself out. Thanks to the book friend 2020131454066698 for the reward of 100 coins, and thanks to the reward of 600 coins. Chapter 30, Sensation in the City. Thinking of this, Zhao Rong was moved. She looked at the people outside who were packing up the martial arts school's supplies, and stood up after a long sigh. Let's go, take me to see your superiors. As a person who was born and raised in Xianjin for many years, Zhao Rong was still unwilling to give up the martial arts school left by her late husband. Without the martial arts school, she would not be very comfortable with the money. She knew that the good days of the martial arts school would not last long, but she still wanted to live a good life, as long as possible, instead of being closed down by an outsider. In the past, she always prepared everything, and was fully confident, but this time, she wanted to take a gamble. Zhao Rong's meeting with Lindsay Wen was not expected by other martial arts school owners, because they actually didn't know what Lindsay Wen wanted. The choice Lincoln gave was not urgent. He didn't even covet the wealth accumulated by the martial arts school over the years and the secret manuals that the martial arts industry thought were precious. He just asked the martial arts school to close and the boxers not to teach boxing. Although this was equivalent to severing their inheritance, in fact, if they were willing to leave Xianjin and go thousands of miles away to pass on their martial arts, Lincoln would not necessarily chase them and kill them. They knew this in their hearts, and coupled with the threat of death, if they opened a martial arts school, they made a choice that day to close the door. In Xianjin, gangs of all sizes were waiting to see the joke of the martial arts industry. Among them were Kainer and his partner who were eyeing the Tongbakwan martial arts school. But suddenly, they found that the sign of the Tongbakwan martial arts school in Xianjin, which had been open for who knows how long, had been taken down. Fuck. Dare to take down the sign of a martial arts school? Is this person looking for death? Kainer was sighing at the stupidity of the person who took down the sign, and then he found that the person who took down the sign was actually the martial artist of the Tongbakwan martial arts school. He rubbed his eyes several times to confirm, and watched the martial artist walk into the hall with the sign and close the door. His face was dull, and his eyes were filled with shock and confusion. This Tongbakwan is going to close. No one answered him, but from the far side of the street, shouts of varying sizes rang out one after another. Oh no. Oh no. Mizanquan is closing. Paoquan. The sign of Paoquan Martial Arts Hall was taken down and smashed to pieces by their owner himself. The sign of Ditinquan was also taken down, and just now a convoy left from the back door. I went into the martial arts hall, and took a look. It was empty and there was nothing inside. Zingaiquan, Huaquan, Taserquan. Voices rang out one after another, and each non-stop voice meant that a martial arts hall's plaque fell. For a moment, Kainer's mind was a little dazed. He wondered if he had come to some other world, or if this was just his big dream. Judging from the sounds he heard, 6 of the 19 or 20 martial arts schools in Xianjin have closed down. If we add those he didn't hear about, the number of martial arts schools closed in Xianjin is probably more than half. If one martial arts school closes, it's a good day to watch the show. If 3 martial arts schools close, it may be that something happened inside the martial arts industry. Although there is some impact, you can continue to watch the show. But if there are 6, 9 or even more, it will be a big event that will shake the whole of Cheonjin. Several people in Cheonjin don't know that opening a martial arts school is opening a source of wealth, which means rolling in money. Now this treasure pot has been smashed, and it has smashed countless schools. Although Kaina is not in the martial arts industry, he can't help but feel cold all over at this time. It is hard to imagine how powerful the intervention is to make martial arts schools in all branches of Cheonjin take down the signs of martial arts schools that have been open for many years at about the same time on the same day. He was a little overwhelmed and did not bother to carefully inquire about the specific situation in the Tangbakwan Martial Arts Hall. He hurriedly turned around and left the street and went back to report the situation to his boss behind him. Now it is the Republic of China, and the situation is in chaos. Cheonjin used to be able to maintain peace on the surface, but now that the martial arts halls are collectively closed, God knows how much waves it will cause in Cheonjin. If they are not careful, their peaceful days will be gone forever. On the way back, Kaina ran into Sun-san. "How are you? Something big has happened. Something big has happened." Sun-san's pupils also widened, and his whole body couldn't stop shaking. Almost all the martial arts halls in the south of Cheonjin are closed. When I came here, I got some information. There are more than 20 martial arts halls in Cheonjin, and now more than 14 have closed. Big thing. A huge thing. 14! Exclamation mark. Kaina was shocked again. In this way, in addition to Zheng Shanyao's martial arts hall and the newly opened 20th martial arts hall, there are only 4 martial arts halls still open in Cheonjin? Exclamation mark. After hearing this number, both of them fell silent. After a while, Kaina said in a daze, "Do you think it has something to do with Master Lin? This is impossible, right?" Sun-san was also a little hesitant. He is just one person, and he can make 14 martial arts schools choose to close collectively. How great is his ability? Even those warlords don't have this ability, right? That's right. Kaina nodded silently, and then the two were speechless again. There are many people like them in Cheonjin. The prosperity of the martial arts industry is not only due to the martial arts boxers, but also the sponsorship and support of politicians and businessmen. The collapse of the martial arts industry will not only affect the surface, but all walks of life. Once the source of income is cut off, and the political achievements are gone, almost all the industry forces in Cheonjin will look over. Their ability to collect intelligence is not comparable to that of ordinary people. Before long, they know the initiator of all this, Lincoln. "We can't let him go on like this," a man in a suit said sternly. "If the martial arts school closes, everyone will be affected and no one will benefit." A person from outside the province dares to stir up trouble in Cheonjin City. "It's obvious that he doesn't take us seriously. We have to find a time to teach him a lesson and let him know what the rules are." Hearing this, another man frowned. "I heard that Master Zhao seemed to have gone to the residence of Adjutant Lin, the governor of another province. I'm afraid that the warlord is preparing to take action against the martial arts industry." It's hard to say, but judging by the temperament of those warlords, it's a matter of time. However, before the warlords officially move in, we have the final say in Cheonjin City. What about according to you? Let's close his martial arts school first. As for him, arrest him and ask him about it. If there is no big problem, pick a good place for him in the suburbs of Cheonjin. Wait for Adjutant Lin to take action first. Then wait a few days and close the martial arts school first. Chapter 31. Guns and cannons enter the scene. Lin's mansion. After Zhao Rong sat down, Lin Ziwen spoke. "I heard that you went to see my master today." "Yes." Zhao Rong nodded, with a little disappointment in his tone. "We want to find Master Zheng to give us justice." Lin Ziwen looked up at her. "Master didn't agree. Brother Zheng didn't say anything," Zhao Rong said calmly. Before he had time to speak, he was interrupted by the new Master Lin. "Master Lin?" Hearing the topic shift to Lincoln, the look in Lin Ziwen's eyes finally showed a slight change. "You 18 people were convinced by him alone." Zhao Rong didn't say anything, but took a sip of the tea on the table, and then said sadly, "Adjutant Lin, do you believe in magic?" "Magic?" Lin Ziwen's eyebrows moved, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "I've seen it in novels and storybooks." "How come? When did Master Zhao start to believe in this kind of thing?" I didn't believe it at first. Zhao Rong's eyes showed a hint of reminiscence, but since Master Wu was torn into pieces by magic, I believe it. When Zhao Rong said this, the expression on Lin Ziwen's face finally changed. He put down the teacup in his hand and frowned slightly. Master Zhao, are you serious? It's understandable that you don't believe it. Zhao Rong sighed and was about to stand up. If there is nothing else, tell me in detail. Lin Ziwen grabbed Zhao Rong. I didn't say I don't believe it, but you have to give some more practical and detailed descriptions. Otherwise, others will think I'm a fool. I can't describe it to you specifically. Zhao Rong shook his head and pried Lin Ziwen's hand apart. Before today, I never thought that there really is such a person in this world. I don't know if he is one of the gods in the novel, but what I know is that if he doesn't use a gun, he wants the lives of our 18 masters and we can't stop him. What did he tell you? Lin Ziwen stared at Zhao Rong. He wanted you to close the door and leave. One is to close the door and leave. Zhao Rong paused, then continued. The other is to go to the life and death arena. One side is a way to live, the other side is a dead end. If Adjutant Lin hadn't come to me, I might have been busy closing the school. Zhao Rong spread his hands. The martial arts school has a lot of money, but there is only one life. Lin Ziwen pondered for a moment, and then slowly said, what if I want you to continue to run the martial arts school? That depends on what kind of support Adjutant Lin can give me. Zhao Rong smiled and said, the martial arts school needs someone to take care of it in order to continue in Xianjin. In the past, Brother Zheng's face suppressed the martial arts industry in Xianjin. Now, if Adjutant Lin wants me to continue to run the martial arts school, I have to suppress Master Lin. Zhao Rong's words were straightforward, almost specifically asking the army behind Lin Ziwen to help deal with Lincoln, but Lin Ziwen did not refuse. The martial arts school made money, and the warlords were jealous. Now what Lin Ziwen valued more was the magic mentioned by Zhao Rong. Qianjin Washu had to be kept alive, which was related to whether the warlord behind him could make money from it, but Lincoln also had to be alive, because Lin Ziwen was very interested in the so-called magic. Zhao Rong's words could not be believed completely, but judging from the attitude of Qianjin Washu, Lin Ziwen thought that a large part of it could still be believed. Magic might not necessarily be what he imagined, but he believed that there must be something magical about it. Otherwise Lincoln would never be able to get his master Zheng Shanao to support him on his own and close all the martial arts schools in Xianjin. The cost was too high. He was more than 90% sure that Lincoln had something good in his hands, but the army could not move around. He had to talk to the governor and then see what happened. This would delay some time, but it would not delay for a long time. At most 1 or 2 days would be enough. The problem now was that all the martial arts schools in Xianjin could not be closed in 1 or 2 days. At least 2 had to be left, even if they were dead. Thinking of this, Lin Ziwen couldn't help but reveal a hint of sternness in his eyes. Zheng Shanao didn't regard Lin Ziwen as his own disciple, so how could Lin Ziwen regard Zheng Shanao as his biological father? The former wanted to use Lin Ziwen, while Lin Ziwen was always thinking about how to step on his master, to get to the top, and accomplish something big. Before, he wanted to take it slow, but now the situation is not right. Maybe he has to take drastic measures. Seeing Lin Ziwen coming in, Zhao Rong, who had achieved her goal, left the Lin mansion with a smile. She believed that Lin Ziwen and even the warlord behind him would definitely take action. You know, even if the golden chain killed a master in front of her, after leaving the room, she couldn't help but covet the magic spell. She couldn't suppress her greed, even after seeing the dead, and Lin Ziwen, who had not experienced the shock, would definitely be more greedy. This is human nature. As Zhao Rong expected, after she left, Lin Ziwen began to collect more information and intelligence, and answered the warlord's call that night. Even his assistants didn't know what he talked about with the warlord on the phone, but at noon the next day, the peaceful city of Xianjin was no longer peaceful. A warlord force entered Xianjin, and the leader of the team was indeed the warlord who had long been heard of. Xianjin was Zhang Zuolin's territory, but under the command of this big warlord, there were military leaders. The troops under these military leaders, who were called warlords, were no more than the big warlords, but for Xianjin city, they were also a considerable force. At least before, there had never been a warlord entering the city. looking at the teams of blue-clad soldiers carrying rifles and pushing cannons walking through the streets. Everyone knew that the peaceful days before were probably gone forever. The door of the street tea house was closed. Through the half-open window, Kaina and Sunsen stared at the team outside and whispered, "The army has entered the city. This is a big deal." "Yeah." Sunsen nodded, his voice a little strange. "Why did the army enter the city for no reason? Are you stupid?" Kaina patted Sunsen's head. "Think about it, and you will know that it must be related to the recent events in the martial arts industry. Except for the two martial arts schools of Zhengtape and Masterlin, there are only 2 martial arts schools in Xianjin that have not closed yet. If you ask me, this army rushed into the city in a hurry. 9 out of 10 times, they are preparing to take over the martial arts industry. If the takeover is successful, then making a fortune in the future will not be a dream." "But," Sunsen's voice was a little puzzled, "isn't Zhengtape the one who has the final say in the martial arts industry now? And that newly opened martial arts school is not easy to mess with either." "Huh, not easy to mess with?" Kaina sneered. "No matter how good a martial artist is, he is made of flesh. Can he block bullets? Can he block artillery shells? They have to cooperate, even if they don't want to, otherwise, they will be killed by our long guns and short guns." Chapter 32. Guests arrive. Lin Ziwen had been waiting at the gate of the mansion, which had been renamed overnight. He was eager to see the troops stop. He hurried forward and saluted. "General, you are here." "Yes." The general nodded calmly, raised his eyelids, and glanced at the gate in front of him. "Thank you for your kindness. It is my duty to serve the general." Lin Ziwen stood up straight, and then gestured to the gate. "General, please." The general did not speak, but stepped over the threshold. Behind him, Lin Ziwen gestured to the other officers, and followed him in. The general was only a high-ranking official, but he had a lot of troops under him. However, today was a special day, and only he and his adjutant Lin Ziwen were qualified to enter the office. In addition, even the security guards had to stand outside the closed door. In the empty room, the warlord sat at his desk and looked through the intelligence collected by Lin Ziwen. He pondered for a long time before closing it and pointed with his fingers. "Are the things in it true? Really? Absolutely true." Lin Ziwen nodded seriously. "I asked several martial arts chimonas and used some tricks, and the answers I got in the end were exactly the same. Your master. I went to sound him out yesterday. He was very tight-lipped, but his attitude has already explained a lot of things." Lin Ziwen hurriedly said, "My people are keeping an eye on him and that Lincoln. I promise there will be no problems." The warlord lowered his head and thought for a moment, then raised his head. "Call your master over and talk to him." The warlord's move was tantamount to roasting Lin Ziwen on the fire, but Lin Ziwen, who regarded his master as his biological father, nodded and agreed without any hesitation, thinking to himself, "Master, master, they say that the master is the biological father. I have knelt in front of you for so many years, and now I have wronged you for my son's great cause." On the other side, the Zheng mansion. "Damn it, you little bastard." Zheng Shanao cursed, while putting all his valuables into a handbag with sharp movements of his hands, then looked up at Lincoln. "I raised him for so many years in vain. Now he has raised such an ungrateful person. You are lucky." Lincoln chuckled. "Last night, your good disciple interrogated and killed several martial arts masters overnight. It's very good that he didn't arrest you." Zheng Shanao wanted to say something, but in the end shook his head and didn't say it. He just lowered his head to button up the suitcase. "Thank you for your trouble." "It's nothing, just a small favor." Lincoln chuckled, stretched out a finger, and slid it casually in the air. Amid the sound of dense sparks, an elliptical portal opened. "Remember what you promised me." "Don't worry, I won't forget." Zheng Shanao nodded solemnly and stepped into the portal. With just one step, he was able to cross hundreds or thousands of kilometers. Zheng Shanao's eyes were full of amazement as he looked at the slowly closing and disappearing portal. But when he thought of the tricks he had learned the previous night, he felt a little happy. The soldiers who were guarding the door diligently didn't know that right under their noses, Lincoln entered the governor's mansion and sent Zheng Shanao thousands of miles away, and then returned to his residence in a daze. They were guarding in vain. What? The person ran away. Lindsay Wynne's eyes widened when he heard the report from his men. He pushed his assistant aside and rushed into the house. It was peaceful inside, and none of the servants were missing, except for the person who should not be missing. "I'm going to fucking kill you." Lindsay Wynne grabbed the assistant, his face full of rage. "I asked you to look at someone, and you showed me this kind of person? A living person just disappeared right under your nose, and you don't even know how he disappeared, you fucking bastard." Looking at Lindsay Wynne's red face, the assistant was terrified and hurriedly defended himself. "I really looked. I surrounded the entire house from top to bottom and made sure that no one had ever left here, but he just disappeared. Maybe there is a secret passage in the house." The assistant's explanation obviously did not satisfy Lindsay Wynne, but now that the person was gone, he had no good way to deal with it, even if he was angry and could only go back empty-handed. "Escaped." The warlord looked at Lindsay Wynne, who bowed his head to admit his mistake, and a smile suddenly appeared on the corner of his mouth. "It seems that your master has more than one trick up his sleeve for you. I'm afraid he has been wary of you since the beginning, and he has thought of a way to escape early. But it doesn't matter, as long as the big head is still there," the warlord said and stood up. "If I remember correctly, the one called Lincoln lives in the suburbs?" "Yes." Lindsay Wynne nodded. "I have sent people to keep an eye on him." The warlord stared at him, smiling. He won't let him run away again this time. Lindsay Wynne's heart trembled, and he replied loudly, "Absolutely not." The warlord nodded, walked out of the door, and said loudly, "The army is moving out. The target is the suburbs of Cheyenne. Even in the future of urbanization, the suburbs of the city are not densely populated areas, not to mention in this era, the place where Lincoln is nothing but empty land. A large piece of flat land is placed there, and there is no need for any special arrangement. The muzzle of the gun can block Lincoln's house." Under the black muzzle of the gun, the yard was silent, as if no one was there. The warlord on horseback looked at his deputy beside him, and someone immediately understood what he meant and sent someone to the yard. "Finally they are here." In the yard, Lincoln stopped teaching Zillin, turned his head, and looked at the gate, with a smile on his face. As if realizing what he meant, Zillin showed a trace of worry on her face. "Nothing will happen, right? Don't worry." Lincoln waved his hand casually. "There is nothing in this world that can kill me. Don't worry, just play with them." Bang. As soon as Lincoln finished speaking, the wooden door was forcibly opened from the outside, and two teams of soldiers filed in. Without waiting for Lincoln to make any move, they had already loaded their rifles and pointed them at Lincoln. "Don't move." "TSK TSK TSK, how rude." The gun that was enough to shoot a person into a sieve did not pose any threat to Lincoln. He kept shaking his head and looked at Lindsay Wynne, who walked in from the door. "If I remember correctly, you seem to be Zheng Shanyao's apprentice? What? You are not satisfied with being someone's son, so you change your master to be a dog? You are sharp-tongued." Lindsay Wynne had an ugly face and snorted coldly. "Wait, I'll see if you can continue to be stubborn. Come on, take him away. Haven't you investigated it clearly? You just come here to die." Lincoln's face was indifferent, and a gleam of light appeared in his eyes. A rustling sound was heard, and the chains materialized by magic gradually appeared. Chapter 33. That's it? Golden chains? It's true. As the chains appeared like a miracle, the two teams of soldiers who were originally solemn became visibly agitated. Their steps were a little fearful, and the neat queue became messy in an instant. With the noise in his ears, Lindsay Wynne couldn't help but shout to stabilize the team again. He looked at Lincoln with surprise and greed in his eyes. Dozens of soldiers holding rifles stood beside him, and the black muzzles of their guns were firmly locked on Lincoln. They would fire instantly, as long as he gave an order. The golden chain was indeed magical, but so what? A bullet shot down and killed the person directly. No matter how magical the chain was, it was useless. Many years of military career made Lindsay Wynne have great trust in guns and cannons, and he was not afraid, even if he stood in front of Lincoln. Ignorance, so fearlessness. This sentence was fully reflected in him. That's a good move. Lindsay Wynne knocked the chain with a cane, and smiled at Lincoln contemptuously. "But I advise you to surrender obediently." He stretched out his hand and gestured. "There are nearly 20 big guns pointing at you in my yard. I can shoot you into a sieve with one order. There are also cannons outside. Be obedient. You can still live. Otherwise, there is only one way waiting for you. Death. Is this your confidence? Lincoln looked at Lindsay Wen, his eyes full of pity, as if he was looking at a severely mentally retarded patient. You are much stupider than I thought. As he said, he clenched his 5 fingers, and the sound of the chain rubbing echoed throughout the yard. Lindsay Wen showed a trace of disbelief in his eyes, but he didn't care about how Lincoln dared to do it, and immediately ordered, shoot, shoot, bang bang bang. The trigger was pulled, and the loud gunshots echoed in the yard, and a group of clear yellow bullets shot out of the muzzle. The bullet speed of hundreds of meters per second has exceeded the observation limit of human vision. Even Zilin could not see the trajectory of the bullets, but in Lincoln's eyes, the movement of the bullets was even slower than a snail. TSK, what a boring attack. Lincoln shook his head, and then the super reaction of contact. Less than 0.1 seconds passed in an instant, and the bullet was approaching. Only 1 centimeter away, the sharp bullet could touch Lincoln's skin, but this centimeter became an insurmountable distance. Controlling the biological force field, to shape a special shape, in the air, in the eyes of Lindsay Wen and others, the yellow bullet rotated wildly, releasing the kinetic energy accumulated in it. Until the energy in it was completely released, it slowly stopped in the air. Removing the shaping ability of the biological force field, Lincoln reached out and took off a bullet, letting the remaining bullets fall to the ground with a tinkling sound, and looked at Lindsay Wen with a chuckle. Is it just this extent? How is it possible? Lindsay Wen trembled. The bullets that were powerful enough to penetrate wooden boards and even iron sheets were frozen in midair, and he picked up the bullets and played with them like picking flowers. Everything that happened before his eyes had never even appeared in his imagination. Looking at Lincoln, who was calm and composed, the psychological support brought by the gun collapsed instantly, and fear spread in his heart again. His eyes were full of panic, and his heart was beating violently, as if his adrenaline was injected. His feet were not disordered, and he turned around and fled towards the door regardless of everything. But with a loud noise, he felt that his body was pierced, and then there was a piercing pain from his limbs. The world spun in front of his eyes, and when he regained consciousness, he clearly saw that a figure had been hanged on the old tree in the yard. The chain exuded a sacred golden light, but it could not illuminate Lindsay Wen's heart. Looking at the old tree with scattered figures, he only felt cold all over. Not only Lindsay Wen, but Zilin also had some hesitation and fear in her eyes. Master, they are all dead. What else? Lincoln said as a matter of course, there is one thing I need to tell you. Unless you are invincible, don't show mercy to anyone who tries to kill you. Of course I cannot kill them, but they will not be grateful for it, and may even retaliate against you afterwards. Unless you are prepared to be killed by someone who repays kindness with enmity that day, don't have any mercy in the duel. If you really pity the enemy, you can kill him first, and then hold a bouquet of small flowers to his grave to repent. He will not come back to life, but you will feel better, and then continue to kill him next time. Of course, if it's fishing, all of the above can be temporarily violated, and catch them all in one net. The theory that Lincoln said was something Zilin had never heard of before. She couldn't help but reveal a trace of confusion in her eyes. She didn't know whether to obey her years of life experience or listen to Lincoln's lessons. She followed Lincoln in a daze and then stepped on a cylindrical hard object. She looked down and saw that it was a yellow bullet. At this moment, she woke up. If it weren't for the master, she would have been shot to death. Mercy? Mercy, what the hell? Let them talk to the knife. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but stroke the small curved knife at her waist, and her will was instantly firm. She originally came from the poor place of Xinjiang to make a living, so this little change of mind was not difficult for her. Zilin was immersed in the sublimation of her will, but Lincoln walked up to Lindsay Wen. Adjutant Lin, I've heard of you earlier, but I haven't seen you until today. Zheng Shanao said you were his best disciple. Now I see that you are indeed very good. Lindsay Wen, who was hanging in the air, had a red face and messy hair. What are you going to do? I warn you, the governor's large army is outside. If you dare to touch me, you will be killed by the artillery bombardment. You will die again. Lincoln recalled, let me think about it. It seems that someone said that I would die if I was pointed at by a gun. What was the final outcome? You. Lindsay was shocked and angry. He wanted to say something, but Lincoln just shook the chain lightly, and the pain of his flesh being torn made him unable to speak. There is a way to ban sounding kamikaze spells, but unfortunately, Lincoln has not improved it yet. He has only been in the Master's world for a few days. It is already very good to improve a spell of chains and portals. If there are more, it will not be enjoying life. Looking at the pale-faced Lindsay, Lincoln pondered for a moment, threw him into the portal, and shouted to the surprised Zheng Shanao over there, "He came to me with a gun. I'll leave him to you, your apprentice. Don't let him down." Chapter 34. You all must listen to me. The portal closed. Zheng Shanao was silent for a moment as he looked at Lindsay, who was lying on the ground with his limbs broken and no longer able to fight. Then his eyes showed a fierce look and murderous intent. He didn't say a word, but Lindsay, on the ground, was frightened to death. Master, I was wrong. There won't be a next time. You really won't have a next time." Zheng Shanao nodded and took out a belt. "I won't let you have a next time, and Master Lin won't allow you to have a next time. Go with peace of mind." Master. Lindsay twisted and begged on the ground, but Zheng Shanao was unmoved. He tied the belt around his neck and kept tightening it. When a person gets old, his spirit fades, so that his good apprentice only remembered before he died that his master was also a ruthless person when he was young. Unfortunately, he remembered it a little too late. The BO force field can block the transmission of sound under control, but Lincoln didn't do that. So when the gunshots in the yard were loud, the warlord outside naturally realized that Lindsay had broken down. He did not feel sorry for the death of his adjutant Lindsay, but he was a little angry that he was hit in the face. With a cold face, he gave an order to his men, and with the sound of clacking, the large army loaded bullets and prepared artillery shells, waiting for the commander-in-chief's order to turn the entire courtyard into ruins. "Fire first," the commander-in-chief said coldly. "Blow up that courtyard wall for me." "Yes." The artillery chief took the order and turned to the artillery position. A moment later, boom. The roar of the artillery shells shook the earth, and a circle of shockwaves spread. With the sound of gunpowder explosion, the wall of Lincoln's courtyard was blown into pieces. The shells that could blow down the city wall could not be blocked by the courtyard wall. With the sound of clattering, a long section of the courtyard wall collapsed, and everyone saw Lincoln in the courtyard in the old tree full of human shadows. The soldiers could not see what Lincoln looked like, but they could see the old tree with scattered human shadows clearly. A gust of wind blew, and the shadow hanging by the chain swayed, which made the soldiers feel cold. What era is it now? The Republic of China. Even the future 21st century has not been able to completely break the feudal superstition, not to mention this era of disaster. Although the warlord's team is now neat and orderly, as if everyone is an elite, most of them still believe in ghosts and gods. At this time, when they suddenly saw the old tree with a full atmosphere of terror, the mystery and fear were instantly filled. If it weren't for the warlord, the next moment, I'm afraid there would be a mutiny. Even with the big boss now, there were some noisy sounds in the army. The mutiny behind him, and the figure hanging on the old tree in the distance, made the warlord look ugly. At this time, he was sure that the information Lindsay gave him was correct. And calculating the time from the start of the gunfire to now, Lincoln was obviously more difficult to deal with than he thought. Defeat, recruit, conquer, all kinds of thoughts flashed through the warlord's mind. But when he raised his telescope and looked at Lincoln, he gave up these ideas and turned to walk behind the main force. Open fire, bury him. Yes. All troops, pay attention. Open fire. Bang, bang, bang. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of bullets and the roar of artillery burst together in this empty land. In just a moment, the overwhelming bullets were like a heavy rain on the head, and the shells, that were almost the size of the head, exploded one after another in the courtyard that was not big to begin with. The raging shockwave rolled up the flames like a dancing snake, forming a layer of heat waves that invaded Lincoln. This violent attack was enough to twist steel, but when it approached Lincoln, it stopped at a distance of 1 centimeter, as if it was separated by two different time and space, and could not move forward. Whether it was the yellow bullets or the broken fragments, or the invisible shockwaves and restless flames, no attack could break through the invisible defense line. It was as if a layer of transparent adamantium stood in front of Lincoln, and all worldly attacks were ineffective in front of him. In the trembling roar like a dragon turning over, the originally clean and tidy courtyard had already collapsed, and flames, dust, and smoke covered the ruins, making it difficult to see what was happening inside. The soldiers used the roaring guns and artillery to suppress their fear, and the warlord used it as a way to vent their anger and establish their majesty. When a round of bombardment was completed, everyone breathed a sigh of relief looking at the land covered with grey-black smoke. They felt that even those Taoist priests and the gods and ghosts should be bombarded into slag again. How could a human body be better than guns and gunpowder? But suddenly, a chill came. They shivered, and then they saw a scene that they would never forget. The low temperature that wanted to freeze the world swept across, and the smoke and dust particles in the air were instantly frozen and fell to the ground. The flames were extinguished, and the broken debris was covered by ice crystals. With a breath of cold air, the turbid world was cleared. Looking at the figure that walked out of the cold world, everyone was stunned. They trembled all over. Even the long guns in their hands could not bring them the slightest sense of security. With a plop, no one knew who took the lead. A soldier knelt down, followed by the second and the third. In this era, where superstition has not yet been broken, Lincoln, who showed a miraculous power, was like a living god to them. To attack a god, perhaps the governor who was desperate had the courage to do so, but there were also many warlord soldiers who did not have this courage. Some people knelt down, but some did not kneel down, especially the governor riding on horseback, who was even more conspicuous. Looking at the dense crowd around him, Lincoln showed a hint of mockery at the corner of his mouth, and a little red light appeared in his eyes. "It's a pity that you gave up the last chance." "What does that mean?" The soldiers who heard Lincoln's voice showed a hint of doubt in their eyes, and the next moment, the red laser light had swept across. Zilla. In the face of thousands of degrees of temperature, any flesh and blood is so fragile. Lincoln just looked around and completed an indiscriminate killing. Except for those who put down their weapons and kneeled down to surrender, no one could stand on the ground and speak. The smell of coke stimulated the nerves of those who survived. They began to vomit in incontinence, but no one dared to look up at Lincoln, except for the warlord who was riding on horseback and only had his legs cut off. The high temperature laser hurt him, but also saved him. The wounds burned by high temperature will not become inflamed, and no blood will flow out. Holding the broken leg, the warlord sweated all over. He looked up at Lincoln with a pale face, and his eyes were filled with unstoppable fear. Are you a human or a ghost? It's a meaningless question. Lincoln looked down at him, and the red light appeared again. The dead don't need to know so much. No. The warlord's face changed drastically. You can't kill me. My superior is Zanglin. If you kill me, you won't survive. Will I care? Lincoln chuckled and shot out the laser. A charcoal body appeared on the ground, and Lincoln turned his head and said, "From today on, everyone has to listen to me." The following pictures are about stirring up trouble all over the world, including fighting against Japan, which have been blocked and cannot be released. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35. Change clothes before fighting. The golden string light began to vibrate, and the world around Lincoln began to move. The dazzling golden light occupied the entire world in front of him, but the sound was transmitted to his ears uncontrollably. The noisy whistles, the noisy discussions, and the constant ding-dong of the mobile phone notifications undoubtedly revealed to Lincoln that the world he came to this time was a modern society. The golden light gradually dissipated. Standing on the busy street, looking at the shining lights and the passers-by in cool clothes on the street, Lincoln showed a smile on his face. Finally, I can enjoy it. Boom. The sudden explosion made the smile on Lincoln's face solidify, and a trace of anger was born. He looked towards the place where the explosion occurred. The cement wall was easily torn apart like a piece of paper, and a shit yellow figure walked out on the scattered gravel. Hulk. The shit yellow hatred roared to the sky. His knotted muscles were stronger than steel, and the hideous bone spurs could easily pierce everything he wanted to pierce. The pain from the experiment remained in his body, stimulating his spirit, and making him always in a state of anger. Although this could not make him stronger, it could fully stimulate his strength. He tore everything in front of him like a brainless beast. The rising flames and screams of fear could not stop his steps. His eyes searched everywhere, just for a strong enough opponent. Hulk. Fire. Fire. On the ground, Ross's subordinates who had not yet retreated shouted loudly, pulling the trigger to vent all the bullets in the magazine on the abomination. But just like when they faced Banner before, this 5.56 bullet that was enough to penetrate the steel plate hit the abomination like hitting a tank and was directly bounced out. Holy shit. The poor performance of the bullet made the commander's face change drastically. Putting down the toy-like rifle in his hand, he opened the suitcase behind the car without hesitation and took out a portable rocket launcher from it. The actions of loading, aiming, and locking were done in one go. The commander pressed the launch button with a solemn expression. With a whistling sound, the shell rushed towards the abomination with an arrow tail flame. Boom. The blazing fireball exploded in the air, and the shockwave caused shrapnel to whistle in all directions. The flames raged in the air, and the commander who fired the rocket launcher smiled a little. Damn monster, go to hell. The commander had great confidence in the rocket launcher, thanks to the high-energy explosives filled in it that could blow up elephants. The raging flames continued to burn in the air, but in just a few seconds the flames were extinguished in the air. Looking at the abomination covered with flames, but replenished by a little bit, the commander was stunned. The rocket launcher could not kill the damn thing in front of him. He could not think of any other individual weapon in the world that could pose a threat to the guy in front of him. Could it be a rocket launcher with a nuclear warhead? In the air, the riots on Broadway Street were always in Ross's sight. Seeing his men being killed one by the abomination, Ross grabbed the intercom and yelled to the stunned and terrified commander, "Retreat, soldiers." The roar in his ears woke the commander up from a dream. He hurriedly turned the steering wheel, stepped on the accelerator, and drove the off-road vehicle towards Lincoln. Go to hell. The roar of the abomination came from the other side of the street. His eyes were fixed on the off-road vehicle, and he casually pulled up the fire hydrant on the ground and threw it out. With a bang, the high-pressure water flow exploded, rushing straight into the sky, and then turned into heavy rain and fell. The red fire hydrant passed by like a cannonball, piercing the commander's off-road vehicle into a pile of wreckage. A sharp voice sounded. Lincoln tilted his head slightly, let the fire hydrant pass, and then looked at the abomination in the distance. Strong. The abomination stared at Lincoln, who had a calm face, and suddenly a smile appeared on his ferocious face. He put down the steel fragments in his hand, moved his feet, and walked towards Lincoln. "Sir, our people can't control that monster at all." The adjutant looked out from the cabin, looking at the fire, water mist and the looming figure below, his face full of anxiety. "Even the rocket launcher can't hurt him. Let me go." In the cabin, Banner, who had been silent all the time, suddenly stood up. "Now, only I can stop him." "No, no." Ross shook his head subconsciously, and then fell silent. Banner is an important asset and research result of the military, but if the monster below is allowed to continue to wreak havoc on Broadway, no one knows what will happen. Maybe the super soldier program carried out by the military will be directly terminated. Ross's attitude was a little shaken, but he never spoke. Seeing this, Banner became more anxious. He even ignored the obstruction of others and walked directly to the door of the cabin. "There is no time to hesitate. It was made by us, and we should be responsible for it." Responsible. Ross was awakened by this word, and he thought of the consequences of inaction. Looking at the anxious Banner and the abomination below, he nodded, then walked to the corner and sat down, lost in thought. There is always a certain information exchange error between the cabin and the ground. This is because Ross's men were wiped out, and the monitoring equipment set up on the ground was also destroyed. Unless he can mobilize the social monitoring system, he can only rely on his naked eyes to see what is happening below. But this is even more difficult to do under the cover of flames and water mist. Ross has no idea what is happening below, and he has no idea that the abomination, which is enough to be a big worry for him, has already set his sights on Lincoln, who has just returned from the other world. You are really looking for death. The violent eyes of the abomination revealed all his thoughts. Lincoln calmly looked at the yellow figure flying from a few hundred meters away, with a sneer on his mouth. He took a deep breath, and his 5 fingers gradually clenched into fists. Strands of stellar power were drawn from the distant sun, and the light of magic flashed, and a set of uniforms appeared on him. Fighting with an ordinary shirt is not cool at all, so Lincoln modified the magic of changing clothes, and made himself a uniform. The black Superman uniform with the little gold edges enough to show his dignity and strength, and make him the most conspicuous individual in the crowd. Note, I tampered with the timeline, and changed the time of the Invincible Hulk. Hulk is no longer after Iron Man 1. Thanks to Shenmou's Ianjian for the reward of 100 coins, and thanks to Bookfriend 161,124,224,911,622 for the reward of 500 coins. Chapter 36 The Incredible Hulk. The uniform worked very well. Almost the next moment, after he finished changing his clothes, Deputy Ross in the sky found a figure on the ground that should have been very small. The deputy looked at Lincoln in uniform on the ground with a telescope. His lips moved a few times, and then he looked at Ross. Sir, the situation seems to have changed. There seems to be a superhero below. Superhero? Ross looked unconvinced. Are you kidding me? No. The deputy shook his head hurriedly. He looks like he is wearing a black tights, and seems to be ready to fight with the abomination. Before the deputy finished speaking, he was interrupted by Ross. Okay, you don't have to tell me what kind of strange clothes that Chewbacca wears to die. I just want to know, has the Hulk appeared? It seems not yet, sir. In midair, Banner's heartbeat began to accelerate as he fell rapidly from a height of 100 meters. Emotions accumulated in his heart, and began to gradually get out of control. The earth, as a background curtain, was approaching rapidly behind him. Just when it was about to hit him on the back, he suddenly widened his eyes and a green light appeared. On the cluttered street, the abomination, whose eyes were fixed on Lincoln, was running at an incredible speed. He was like a little giant, unstoppable and indestructible like a tank, and his flexibility and speed were as unpredictable as a wild ape. He roared, as if cheering in advance for the next battle, but Lincoln did not move, but just raised his eyes to look at the figure falling rapidly from the sky under the cover of night. Roadblock, forward speed, calculate the predetermined position of the abomination, gravity acceleration and height, calculate the falling point, so the two of them will collide with each other. Lincoln's eyes flashed with a hint of interest, which made the abomination even more angry, and he roared. But the next moment, a huge roar sounded, and the shit yellow figure that was running wildly on the street disappeared. Boom. The acceleration and huge weight allowed Hulk to easily smash through the concrete floor. Cracks spread out one after another, and in the middle of the cracks, a dark pit led to the underground sewer. Hulk. A raging voice came from the black hole. Anyone could hear the anger and frustration contained in this roar. Think about it. Abomination gathered all his strength and speed to launch a desperate charge against Lincoln, but halfway through the journey, he was smashed into the dirty sewer by the Hulk, who fell from the sky. He was not like the Hulk, who was stronger and stronger as he got angrier, but his mind was not mature yet. He hated this place and the sewer. The rage accumulated in his heart made him change his target without hesitation. A heavy punch in his hand burst out in the dark sewer, and before Hulk could react, it hit him heavily on the chin. Bang! The shock wave swept through the sewer, and waves sounded on the water surface. Another roar sounded, and the ground, that had already been broken, was like being blown up by high explosives, and a green figure was thrown out from it. Hulk. It's Hulk. He's still alive. In the cabin, looking at the green figure below, Hulk's girlfriend Betty finally put down her worries, and began to observe the situation below. Not only her, Lincoln was also observing the situation. Of course, he had the ability to stop the battle directly, but there was no need. He wanted to watch for a while longer. Who could stop him? The birth of Hulk was difficult to replicate, because most people would only die in a gamma explosion instead of becoming the Hulk, but Abomination could. All you need to do is find out from Abomination what he had injected, and then use 14.3% of Banner's blood plus gamma rays to replicate a monster like Abomination. Abomination doesn't have the ability of Hulk to become stronger the more angry he is, but as a mutant monster whose normal combat power crushes Hulk, he doesn't need this ability because he can't control it. On the ground, the antidote injected by Dr. Blue into Hulk was constantly suppressing Hulk's anger and strength, which made him always at a disadvantage in the battle with Abomination. 1 punch, 2 punches, 3 punches. The yellow and green monsters roared on the street, flying at any time, and the flames burst out. With 1 kick, the Hulk, who had almost no power to fight back, was kicked into a building. The Abomination turned his head again and looked at Lincoln. Hulk was no longer the strong man he thought he was. He needed a new target. He thought that the way Lincoln was torn apart by him might make him happy. Die. The monster-like roar sounded, and the Abomination swung his arms. Pieces of stone shuttled like cannonballs and hit Lincoln densely. Too slow, too slow. Lincoln shook his head, and then his figure suddenly flashed. The roaring sonic boom resounded through the street, and the majestic shock wave impacted the debris and suppressed the flames everywhere on the street. The substantial pressure brought by the shock wave came to his face, and the Abomination's tank-like collision was even suppressed. His thick fingers clenched into a fist and smashed towards Lincoln in the air. Lincoln just smiled contemptuously and then clenched his fists. Boom. The visible shock wave spread in a circular air shield, shattering all the glass within a radius of dozens of meters. The voice of Abomination was thrown out like a rucksack and smashed into a distant building like a bag of garbage. Lincoln did not chase the flying Abomination because the Hulk, who had accumulated anger again, jumped out of the ruins. With his anger accumulating, he looked around and then locked his target on Lincoln without hesitation. He roared like a beast, rushed towards Lincoln with heavy steps, and raised his fist as big as an iron pot. Boom. The sound of the exploding sound wave came again, and Lincoln's figure stood still in the air, while Hulk flew out like the previous Abomination. The monster that had been wreaking havoc on the streets and left Ross helpless was weak in front of Lincoln and had no power to fight back. In the sky, Ross was completely stunned when he saw 2 figures, 1 yellow and 1 green, rushing out again and again, and being knocked away again and again. Who is he? The deputy was silent for a moment, then looked at the blank screen in front of him. I don't know, sir. He is not in the population system. Are you kidding me? Ross looked down from the cabin at the figure like an invincible god of war below, and his head shrank again. The information of such a person is not included? Is the job of those people in the National Security Agency just to sit in the office and drink coffee all day? Sir, maybe SHIELD. Shut up and don't mention the damn boiled egghead in front of me. Chapter 37. If I don't speak, who dares to speak? Ding ling ling. As soon as Ross finished speaking, a ringtone that didn't fit in with the plane rang out. Ross was silent for a while, and under the complicated gaze of the adjutant, he took out the phone from his pocket and pressed the answer button. Hello. I heard you were in some trouble. A voice that Ross hated came from the other end of the phone, and his face suddenly became ugly. None of your business. Ross looked at the street below, and after confirming that Lincoln had tortured Hulk and Abomination with one hand, he continued, I can handle it. Are you sure you can handle it? At Trident headquarters, Fury, who had obtained the street surveillance authority, looked at the surveillance screen quietly. Not someone else will help you solve it. Shut up, Nick Fury. Ross snorted coldly. No matter what you are thinking, as long as this incident can be solved smoothly, I will not give you the opportunity to extend your claws to my department. Really? Fury looked at his agent list in Ross's super soldier research department and said in silence, how do you know that I haven't completed the infiltration of your department? What do you mean? Ross's face changed, but before he could ask clearly, Fury on the other end had hung up the phone directly, lying on the chair and whistling. Fuck you. Looking at the hung up phone, Ross was furious, and he was disgusted by Fury's words. As soon as Fury said this, he might not be able to find anything if he checked himself, but if he didn't check, he would probably dream about how many people had infiltrated his department. Inexplicably, he thought of what others had said about Fury. This bastard is not only black-skinned, but also black-hearted. After hanging up the phone, Fury looked at the surveillance screen in silence for a while, then called Coulson in and pointed at Lincoln on the screen. I want his file information. All of it. Okay, Chief. Carlson nodded, turned around and left, leaving Fury alone looking at the screen in contemplation. Broadway. The battle between Lincoln and the Hulk abomination continued, but in everyone's opinion, this was actually no longer a real battle. Kill you, kill you. The fact that Lincoln crushed him with power again and again made Abomination furious. He roared madly and launched attacks on Lincoln again and again. Boom. Another physical collision that was enough to overturn everything around, but this time, Abomination did not fly out, and Lincoln caught him. Clamping the arm of the Abomination with both hands, Lincoln slowly floated up to a high place. The biological force field materialized and transmitted layers of ripples from his arms, as if a 10,000-ton hydraulic press was pressing heavily on the body of the Abomination. Lincoln looked down at the Abomination from above. The energy in his body gathered, and the red beams in his eyes surged out. The high temperature rays of thousands of degrees seemed to hit the Abomination, as if they had a real shape. The ground under his feet cracked, and his body continued to sink. The skin defense that was enough to withstand the bombardment of the rocket launcher was instantly torn apart under this high temperature. The muscles were burned, and the blood was evaporated. The heart-wrenching pain stimulated the mind and body of the Abomination. No. His wailing resounded through the sky, and anyone could hear the pain in it. The scorching heat made the Abomination unbearable. He struggled hard to escape, but Lincoln's hands held him tightly. Even if his muscles were knotted and swollen to several points, he could not break free from Lincoln's restraints. Hulk. Attack. Just as the Abomination's resistance was weakening, a muffled voice sounded from not far away, and then, under Betty's worried eyes, the angry Hulk rushed towards Lincoln. You're looking for death. Lincoln heard Hulk's roar clearly. He punched Abomination on the head and hammered him into the ground. Then he raised his eyes slightly and looked at Hulk. His eyes were red and his hot eyes hit Hulk in an instant. With a bang, the powerful impact made Hulk fly backwards again. The high temperature burned his skin fiercely. This irresistible pain made Hulk, who had only known rage since his birth, feel fear for the first time. At Lincoln's feet, seeing Hulk share a lot of damage, the scattered pupils of Abomination under his skull were effused. Looking up at Lincoln with red eyes in the sky, Abomination's eyes were full of fear and awe. He couldn't help but suppress his breathing and tried to escape far away. 1 meter, 3 meters, 5 meters, 10 meters. He crawled farther and farther away and even showed a hint of joy in his eyes until he felt a palm grabbing the protruding bone spur on his body. Where are you going? No. In an instant, Abomination felt like falling into an ice cave, and his whole body was cold. He didn't care to look back and stomped his feet hard to escape far away, but the power of the palm made his body unable to move at all. Snap. The sudden sound of bone breaking rang in his ears, followed by a piercing pain. Abomination fell to the ground in pain, but Lincoln's hands did not stop at all. Breaking the bone spur at his elbow and pulling out the protrusion on his spine, Lincoln performed the most bloody action with clean and neat movements. The wailing, the breaking sound, and the sound of flesh tearing echoed together, and the flowing yellow-green blood accumulated on the ground of Broadway Street into a pool of blood. When Lincoln stopped, the Abomination, who was still full of energy a few minutes ago, had already crawled on the ground, as fragile as a hedgehog with all its thorns plucked out. Pain and despair eroded Abomination's spirit. Even though Lincoln's figure moved away from where Hulk was, he just quietly crawled on the ground, not daring to move. Next, it's your turn, Hulk. Unyielding. Boom. Unyielding? Lincoln looked at Hulk with a slightly cold face and turned his wrist. In my hands, nothing can be unyielding. If there is, I will break all your bones. As he said that, he moved his body, grabbed Hulk's arms with both hands, and twisted them behind his back, then raised his foot and stepped hard on Hulk's broad spine. Crack. A sour and astringent fracture sound was heard. With just one kick, Hulk's spine was broken by Lincoln, and then his arms, legs, and even his skull were stepped on heavily, full of cracks and dents. Superman's violence is most purely embodied in Lincoln, and the Hulk, whose bones have been broken, is the best proof. Lincoln is not worried about the death of Abomination or Hulk, because these two things are the product of gamma ray irradiation, and they are very tough, and it is not a problem for them to die with just a broken bone. Pile these two muddy things together, and no one dares to speak on this street unless Lincoln speaks. Chapter 38. I'm also a homie Arwana. Reason is a good thing. Lincoln likes to communicate with things that have self-reason, but it is obvious that neither Abomination nor Hulk is a rational guy. Therefore, Lincoln can only throw a few punches first and then make his words clear while fighting. In this way, what he said will be engraved in the hearts of Abomination with excruciating pain and will not be easily forgotten. Abomination, who pursues power and opponents, has regained his calm. After Lincoln broke or removed the protruding bone spurs all over his body, his only thought is to find a quiet place where he can be shut up without being disturbed by others. He is afraid that, if he comes out again, he may really be beaten to death by Lincoln. Abomination can feel that, if Hulk hadn't intervened, he might have been burned to death by Lincoln's heat vision. As for Hulk, he was indeed very angry at first, but after Lincoln broke all the bones in his body with his punches, he also became calm, and closed down. Hulk is essentially an angry personality born in gamma rays. Under Banner's long-term suppression, Hulk is more like a bad child with great power, rather than a pure beast or villain. This is fundamentally different from Abomination. But this is not a big problem for Lincoln. As long as the other party can't beat him, he can use fists and violence to persuade the other party to listen to him. Just like now, the free people of New York have great emergency avoidance skills. Even if they are caught off guard and fight two gamma ray monsters on Broadway, they can find their position in the chaos. They disappeared without a trace during the riots until Lincoln completely subdued Abomination Hulk with an iron fist, and their figures appeared from different corners. In a messy street, Abomination and Hulk were piled up casually like two bags of garbage, and on this yellow and green garbage, Lincoln sat quietly, like a thinker, looking at the two monsters that were about to destroy New York, lying on the ground like dead dogs, and then looking at Lincoln, who was silent. The people of New York felt that their values, which they had cultivated for many years in a money-based society, were gradually bursting. They could still accept the appearance of Abomination and Hulk. After all, the credibility of the US government has always been low, and the conspiracy theory that the government is conducting secret biological experiments has been around for a long time. It is not uncommon for such monsters to destroy the streets with a wave of their hands and feet. Just wait and sue and demand compensation. The problem is, these monsters that can withstand rocket launches without any damage, and there are two monsters, were defeated by a fucking human wearing a cape? They began to wonder if they had come to the comic world. You know, even Captain America, who was promoted to the sky during World War II and became a myth, did not have such a brilliant record. It was not just them who had their values burst and fell silent. Ross, who had been observing the battlefield situation from the sky, also fell silent at this time. Originally, his idea was to sit back and wait. If Lincoln was killed by Hulk and Abomination, he would send someone to embezzle a sum of money from the corpse. On the other hand, if Lincoln defeated Abomination and Hulk, he could also use the name of the military to put pressure on Lincoln and let him cooperate with him in a new round of human research. Ross thought everything was very good, but now he hesitated. The bone spurs pulled out of Abomination with skin and flesh were still on the ground, and the blood was flowing. Hulk was even broken by Lincoln in a brutal way. Facing such a ruthless person, Ross suspected that, if he dared to go down and ask Lincoln to surrender in the name of the military, his end might become a puddle of mud. Silently giving up the idea of using force to suppress others, he commanded the plane to land, and then walked up to Lincoln with some trepidation. "Hello, my name is Ross. Thank you for helping us control these two out-of-control experiments." "Help you?" Lincoln looked up at Ross and lifted Hulk and Abomination with his heels. "You mean, these two things are yours?" Ross felt bad, but he had no choice. "Yes, we are affiliated with the military." "Stop, I'm not interested in knowing which unit you are from." Lincoln gestured, jumped off Hulk, and grabbed Ross. "Since these things that attacked me are yours, then we can talk about compensation and labor fees now." "Compensation? Labor fees?" Ross was a little confused. He just wanted to open his mouth to refute, and he felt the arm around his shoulders began to tighten gradually, as if being held in the hand of a giant. Ross's body was constantly being oppressed. He felt as if he heard the sound of bones moving. He looked at Lincoln in astonishment. His eyes flashing with red light were extremely oppressive. "Do you have any objections?" Ross's face showed a trace of pain and struggle, and finally he said in agony, "No objection." "That's good." Lincoln nodded in satisfaction and loosened his arm around Ross's shoulders. The sudden sense of relaxation made Ross stagger, and his eyes were full of shock and anger as he looked at Lincoln. "How much compensation do you want?" "You may have misunderstood. This does not depend on me, but on you." Lincoln pointed to Abomination and Hulk, who were gradually recovering on the ground. "These are my trophies. If you can't give me a suitable price, I will make them disappear forever. Do you understand?" Ross looked at the two little giants on the ground, and the corners of his mouth twitched. "How about $5 million US? $5 million? Lincoln looked at Ross with a hint of surprise in his eyes. "I didn't expect that their value is so low in your eyes. In this case, I will help you burn them." After speaking, a red light appeared in Lincoln's pupils, and the heat vision instantly bombarded Hulk and Abomination. The temperature of over 10,000 degrees instantly burst out, and a red warm shield enveloped the two of them. Under such high temperature, their skin burned, and their muscles melted. Stop. We can negotiate." Seeing that Lincoln was about to kill the two hateful people on the spot because of a disagreement, Ross's face changed drastically, and he immediately raised his hand and shouted, "We can negotiate. I promise it will not be less than $50 million US. You still have one chance." Lincoln stopped his hot gaze and raised a finger to Ross. "This is the last offer. If I'm not satisfied, I will kill them immediately." Seeing that Lincoln seemed to have no attitude towards money, Ross was speechless for a moment, until a piece of fallen rock fell from the dilapidated building next to him. He suddenly woke up. "Do you want a place to live?" "Where?" "Manhattan," Ross explained. "We have a building there, worth $190 million US. I can give it to you as compensation and labor fees." Chapter 39. People who walked out of history. Although it was unknown why Ross, the head of a military laboratory, had a building in Manhattan, there was no doubt that Lincoln was very satisfied with the compensation he gave. Confirming that Ross's compensation was sincere, Lincoln nodded, stepped on the ground, and with a whoosh, he rushed into the sky with a sonic boom, and disappeared without a trace in the night. He had no identity in this era, and the handover of the procedures for a building might take some time, so he was not interested in waiting here slowly, so he simply left first. Lincoln was not worried that Ross would go back on his word and refuse to give compensation, because this would offend a powerful enemy who could beat the Hulk to death. At that time, Lincoln would not mind beating a few more people to death. Ross looked up at the deep night sky, as if he wanted to find the direction Lincoln left from it, but he stared for a long time and found nothing. At this moment, the Hulk, who had been silent all the time, suddenly moved. Just a broken bone, no problem. After resting for so long, the fractures and internal injuries on Hulk's body had already recovered to a great extent under his powerful self-healing ability. Although he couldn't withstand the punches of Lincoln or the Abomination at this time, the remaining soldiers around Ross were not enough to pose a threat to Hulk. At first, he didn't move because of the pressure brought by Lincoln, but now that Lincoln is gone, Hulk can naturally stand up. Ross was stunned to see Hulk, who went from near death to full of energy in just a few breaths. He didn't expect that the Hulk, who looked big and strong, would become cunning. Looking at the green figure running into the depths of darkness, Ross wanted to stop Hulk, but looking at the remaining soldiers around him, he had to give up in the end. Ross is now a bit of a headache. The $190 million compensation was enough to make him feel painful, but as soon as Lincoln left, Hulk disappeared without a trace under his nose. Now, his $190 million got a half-dead Abomination. Damn, blood loss. Ross was furious, but he could only accept the reality. He called on the remaining men to recapture the Abomination, and the scattered flesh and bones were all cleaned up. The appearance of an Abomination was already unexpected, and he would never allow the scattered tissue samples of the Abomination to produce anything strange. Ross silently took the only remaining Abomination back to his experimental base. On the other side, Nick Fury also fell silent. Thanks to the fierce battle between the Abomination and the Hulk, the surveillance facilities on Broadway were damaged to an unknown extent. Even in the name of the director of SHIELD, he could only barely find some unclear surveillance videos. But even if these videos were so damaged that it was difficult to see the whole picture, Fury could feel the primitive and pure violence displayed by Lincoln. He couldn't say whether the figure in the surveillance had any violent tendencies, but it was obvious that this person who could defeat the Abomination and the Hulk by himself would not be an easy character to get along with. Just as he was thinking, the door of the office was knocked again, and Coulson's voice sounded outside the door. "Director, I found some information." Fury's eyebrows moved slightly. He turned off the computer in front of him, and then looked at the folder that Coulson brought. The paper folder looked a bit old. After opening the folder and taking out the sealed files of the concept, Fury became more convinced of his idea. Name: Lincoln. Gender: male. Age: 22 years old. Hometown: Brooklyn, New York. Personal life: on July 5, 1943, he completed the conscription and served in the 107th Infantry Regiment, during which he made military achievements. On December 2, 1943, the Battle of Azano was lost, and he was captured in the 107th Infantry Regiment. On December 16, 1943, he was selected by Hydra scientist Zola as a test subject to participate in the Cosmic Cube experiment and disappeared. The content of the paper document was very short, but it also conformed to the characteristics of that era. But what deserved Fury's attention was not this piece of paper, but a videotape that was placed in the file bag together. He pondered for a moment, then played the videotape, and then the high-definition video of the Cosmic Cube human experiment directed by Lincoln, Zola, and Schmidt was replayed in front of Fury. The content of the videotape was not long, and it ended in just a few minutes. The office returned to silence, but Fury looked at the paused computer screen with a complicated look in his eyes. After a long time, he opened his mouth and uttered, "Fuck." Lincoln's existence could not be found in the usual population system. Fury originally thought that Lincoln's identity might be a relatively secret that required special means to be found. As a result, Lincoln's identity was indeed quite special, so special that he even hoped that Lincoln was just a simple stowaway. A veteran who made outstanding contributions in World War II suddenly appeared after disappearing for decades and became a superman who could suppress two monsters alone. Fury could already imagine what kind of uproar would be caused if the news was leaked. Of course, this is not the most important thing. What really gave Fury a headache was the fact that Lincoln reappeared. Since S.H.I.E.L.D. salvaged the Cosmic Cube from the ocean, they have never stopped their internal research on the Cosmic Cube. Although they could not replicate the equipment that could extract the energy of the Cosmic Cube without Zora and Schmidt, they had done a lot of other experiments. They had conducted many experiments on the special reaction between organic organisms and the cube, but they could not replicate what happened to Lincoln. Gradually, they thought that the so-called teleportation was a non-existent thing and a ridiculous mistake made by Zora when writing the experimental log. But now Lincoln appeared. All assumptions were overturned. What Fury was worried about now was that he had no idea how many experiments Hydra had conducted with the Cosmic Cube. The return of Lincoln, the experimental subject, was enough to change the current world situation. If more people returned from the past history, he could not imagine what would happen. The cunning and suspicious Fury made a lot of associations based on just one videotape, but he would never have thought that the so-called experimental videotape was simply a scam planned and directed by Lincoln. After all, who would have thought that Hydra's top commander Schmidt would act with an ordinary infantry prisoner? Captain America Steve, who broke through Clausburg, could not have thought of it, nor could the people of the Strategic Science Corps during World War II, nor could Nick Fury, now the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. The battle-hardened senior agent Nick Fury eventually fell, trapped by his own inertia of thinking, and went further and further down the wrong path. His thinking gradually became distorted. Chapter 40: The Unlucky Guy and the Villain. The building that Ross promised was very good, but it was definitely not available tonight. But Lincoln was not too worried, because he had other places to stay. The Continental Hotel was the power that Lincoln asked Schmidt to build before leaving Clausburg. Although Schmidt's ambition was eventually shattered by Captain America, the Continental Hotel, an organization that had no connection with Hydra on the surface, was retained. Later, the Continental Hotel, as a dark assassin liaison organization, was absorbed by Hydra and became an important part of ruling the dark side of the world. It can be said that Lincoln's expectations for the Continental Hotel were fully met during this period. Number 175 Fifth Avenue, Manhattan Island, New York. Just like the assassins who travel around the world day and night, the Continental Hotel never stops operating. No matter when you push open the door and walk into the hotel that is not open to the public, you can always see the meticulous receptionist standing behind the counter. The moment Lincoln walked into the hotel, the camera had already recorded his face and completed the intelligent comparison. Glancing at the comparison information on the screen, the front desk staff Sharon looked at Lincoln calmly. "Sir, we are a private club and not open to the public." "I know it's a private club." Lincoln looked at the people coming and going around and nodded slightly. "So there must be a way to stay here, right?" Sharon looked at Lincoln carefully for a few seconds, making sure he was not joking, and then took out a card from the counter and put it in front of Lincoln. "Sir, you need to activate your personal information before you can check in." Lincoln took the business card and looked at it. There was a website on it, a network address that was different from what he knew. He pondered for a moment and handed the card back. "I don't have a mobile phone or a computer. Why don't you help me?" Looking at Lincoln's simple outfit, Sharon was silent again. After a moment, he took the card back from the front desk and silently typed on the computer keyboard. Name: Lincoln. Sex: age. Keep it secret. Codename: Point God. Sharon suddenly stopped what he was doing. He looked up and gave Lincoln a meaningful look. "Are you sure you want to use this codename? This is not a game." "I'm sure." Lincoln nodded with a slight smile on his face. "Just register it." Sharon looked at Lincoln again, as if he wanted to find out where Lincoln got the courage to register such a name in the assassin organization's network, but after some thought, he couldn't see anything. His fingers tapped 3 times on the keyboard, and as Sharon pressed the enter key, a codename called God, that no one had ever dared to take, appeared in the assassin organization's registration network. The registration network for assassin codenames is a public network. Almost at any time, there are people watching to see if there are new assassins joining. The appearance of the codename God naturally cannot be hidden from their eyes. When a post titled "Shock, someone dares to call himself God" appeared in the Assassin Exchange forum, the entire assassin world was detonated. Killers often choose code names according to their own wishes, but considering that a cool code name will often become the focus of everyone's attention, most people's code names are mediocre. Among a group of code names composed of letters and numbers, the code name God seems out of place, and it looks like a new rookie's mockery to everyone. Some people didn't care about it, but some people laughed. "Come on, let's teach this new rookie a lesson." The opponents of assassins are not only policemen and bodyguards, but also colleagues. Lincoln didn't know how he was targeted so quickly. After completing the registration of the assassin's identity, he pointed to the counter and said, "Help me get a room." Sharon didn't move. "You don't have enough gold coins." "It doesn't matter if I don't have it, as long as someone has it," Lincoln said, looking at a killer who just walked in from the door. "Put it on his account." Sharon looked at the unlucky guy targeted by Lincoln and shook his head. "Sorry, unless he agrees, I can't take the gold coins in his pocket to pay for your room. In addition, no force is allowed in the Continental Hotel." "Really?" Lincoln nodded gently, turned his head to look at the unlucky assassin, and stretched out his hand. With a whoosh, in the stunned eyes of the unlucky guy, the gold coins in his pocket instantly tore his clothes and fell into Lincoln's hands like a bird returning to its nest. Lincoln threw the gold coins in his hand up and down, making crisp tinkling sounds. He slapped the gold coins one by one for the hotel, and one to help me find a good looking partner. I like traditional ones. Sharon collected the room fee and tapped the other gold coin a few times with his fingers. "I suggest you add another one. The quality will be much higher, and there will be a special selection list. Of course, this is just my personal suggestion." Lincoln pondered for a moment, shrugged and put another gold coin, then add another one. When the dirty deal happened right in front of him, and the money used was his hard-earned money, the unlucky killer was furious. He rushed up with a bare face and tried to snatch the gold coins. but Charon's leisurely speed took away the 2 gold coins faster than him. So, the unlucky guy could only look at Lincoln. "Give me back my gold coins." "What if I don't? What can you do to me?" Lincoln stretched out his hand to pry open the unlucky guy's hand that was grabbing his collar and looked down on him with the image of a big villain. "Be careful. This is the Continental Hotel. If you use force, no one can save you." It would have been better if Lincoln didn't say anything. This immediately reminded the unlucky guy. He hurriedly looked at Charon. "You saw it. You just saw it. He took my gold coins away. You should expel him." "You said that I robbed your gold coins. Do you have evidence?" Lincoln laughed. "Obviously your gold coins ran into my hands by themselves. I just gave them a better home. How can you say that I robbed your gold coins?" As he spoke, Lincoln looked at Charon. "In my opinion, this kind of sinister guy should be expelled from the killer list. What do you think?" Charon, who was in a neutral position, didn't say anything, but just operated on the computer. The unlucky killer was so angry that his face turned red. He stared at Lincoln with naked murderous intent in his eyes. "I must kill you. Just wait for me." Yes, I'll wait." Lincoln waved his hand, took out a yuan tao from his pocket, and threw it on the ground. The unlucky killer's eyes were involuntarily attracted by the jingling coins. At this time, Lincoln's calm voice sounded, "This is a reward for you. Pick it up." The unlucky killer's eyes went dark, and he felt that the blood was rushing to his head like a fountain. Chapter 41 Near Artificial Intelligence has rebelled. Lincoln, who was transformed into a villain, took away all his gold coins. The unlucky killer no longer had the capital to stay in the hotel and choose services. He watched Lincoln's back disappear at the corner of the stairs, and he hated it so much that he seemed to want to bite his teeth. He didn't have the courage to get angry at the neutral Continental Hotel, so he could only release all his resentment on Lincoln. He was so angry that he had forgotten how Lincoln took the gold coins from his pocket. At this time, he had only one thought in his mind: to teach Lincoln, who had taken away all his wealth, a lesson. As a super organization that communicates with all killers in the world, the Continental Hotel can provide almost all enjoyable services. Although few people would look for a bed partner in the hotel, when someone really looks for one, the Continental Hotel can also come up with a person of quite high quality. At least from Lincoln's perspective, the quality of the person who appeared in his room was high enough to be a star. A bad omen. And it was a big omen. Lincoln was amazed, and then stepped forward. "I have done a lot of wrong things. I want you to help me cleanse my sins." The girl showed a charming smile on her face, and put her arms around Lincoln's arms. "Walking in the world, everyone has sins. I don't care how sinful you are, I only care whether your sins are big or not." Lincoln didn't speak. He drew the curtains to create a closed environment, and then revealed his heart. The girl's eyes stagnated at first, and then smiled. "Your sins are deep. Maybe I need some time to purify it." "I have plenty of time." Lincoln looked at the stack of gold coins on the bedside and smiled. "Money can't buy time, but it can buy time. The Continental Tavern is invisible and non-existent to ordinary people, but it is a bit difficult to expect it to be hidden from some special organizations. Especially for Hydra, which controls the Continental Hotel. Lincoln's appearance and stay are no longer a secret. New Jersey, inside the secret base of SHIELD. This is a secret base that nominally belongs to SHIELD, but is actually controlled by Hydra. Public documents show that there is nothing special about this place, but in fact, there is a giant computer underground in the secret base, which stores Zora's personality consciousness. Just like Tony has an artificial intelligence named Jarvis, Hydra also has an artificial intelligence named Zora. This ensures the secrecy of Hydra's existence, allowing them to exist in a new form after World War II. But now, the trouble caused by Zora as an artificial intelligence has also emerged. Hydra and SHIELD are one and the same. When Fury got the video data about Lincoln, Zora actually knew that the god he was fanatically loyal to had appeared again. For the first time, the underground machine warehouse in New Jersey started at full power. A series of special symbols kept flashing in the computer, and finally Zora appeared. The biological awareness of the transformation of electronic consciousness did not remove the factor of loyalty from Zora's consciousness. On the contrary, with the formation of electronic consciousness, loyalty to Lincoln even became one of Zora's underlying principles. It watched and compared the video of Lincoln's first appearance over and over again, and finally came to a conclusion that made him flash with lightning. His god is back. What wonderful news. It made Zora even happier than the creation of the Inside Project. Without any hesitation, he began to use the communication network he could control to send a communication request to Lincoln. Ding-ling-ling, a crisp mobile phone ring rang on the bedside table. Looking at the figure beside him who had fallen asleep due to exhaustion, Lincoln was silent for a while and then answered the call. That seemed to be from Zora. As soon as the call was connected, Zora's fanatical voice rang in his ears. Great God. Stop, say what you want to say. Lincoln interrupted Zora without waiting for him to finish the long string. Tell me, what's the matter with calling me? At this moment, you should be lying in the secret base in New Jersey preparing for the Inside Project. Hearing Lincoln's words, Zora also got to the point. Great God, those stupid Hydras are trying to blaspheme your authority. It sounds like you know their plan very well. They are trying to use the ridiculous and childish means of humans to win over and suppress you. They are trying to force you to cooperate with them in human experiments. They are a group of damn termites. Is that all you know? I'm sorry, Great God, Zora said in a low voice. The room where the snakeheads hold meetings is completely isolated from electromagnetic signals. Even I don't know what they are talking about. How is your Inside Project going? Everything is going well. Zora's voice became excited again. I have found the best prediction algorithm. The only problem now is a powerful enough calculator and weapons that can carry out a blanket strike. Great God, if you need, I can set the target for you to be those damn Hydra. Lincoln imagined the future scene of the Hydra heads excitedly watching the aerospace mothership take off and then pointing the guns at themselves, and shook his head. Forget it, this is too boring. You just need to keep some backup plans and make sure that I can take over the Inside Project at any time. As for other things, you don't have to worry about it. Do you need me to block the retrieval of another artificial intelligence for you? Zora continued. Tony Stark is as annoying as his father, and so is the butler Jarvis. No need. Lincoln shook his head. Help me create a new identity, and then send a message to Ross in my name, asking him to give me everything he promised as soon as possible, and then keep silent. Obey your will, Great God. Zora's tone carried a hint of piety. If you need me, just call me on any communication device, and I will appear by your side. Zora's voice disappeared. The call was cut off, and there was no relevant trace left in the telephone communication record, as if this call had never existed. At the same time that Zora betrayed Hydra, the heads of Hydra gathered in a secret meeting room and began to discuss the video that Fury had obtained. As the successors of the Red Skull Hydra, they knew many secrets that S.H.I.E.L.D. did not know, including the matter about Lincoln. In the documents left by Schmidt, Lincoln was almost invincible, but the heads of Hydra did not think so. However, they did not know that their only artificial intelligence had defected to the enemy. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42 Fury. I'm invited to find a woman. Everyone. Schmidt left only limited information about the man named Lincoln, so we should collect as much intelligence as possible. As he spoke, Baron Strucker cast his eyes on Alexander Pierce, who had been promoted from the director of SHIELD. Perhaps our respected Mr. Alexander can provide considerable help. After all, New York has always been firmly controlled by you, and you are unwilling to let go. The sarcasm in Strucker's words made Alexander snort coldly. I have handed over the affairs of SHIELD to Nick Fury, and I'm not directly in charge of SHIELD now. But he is in New York. Strucker interrupted him, and he is at the Continental Hotel now. How do you know? Because everyone knows it now. Strucker snorted coldly. A killer code named God has attracted everyone's attention, and now everyone knows that he has checked into the Continental Hotel. At this point, Strucker paused, then a playful smile appeared on his face. Maybe it won't be long before we can see an extremely exciting killer civil war on Mr. Alexander's territory. Mr. Alexander, I hope you can broadcast the wonderful footage so that we can see it more clearly. Stracker's words made Pierce look a little ugly. He hadn't thought about it at first until Stracker pointed it out. Pierce suddenly remembered that just before their closed-door meeting, Lincoln had done something that was enough to cause a big riot. Damn it. Pierce cursed in his heart, not knowing whether it was because of Stracker's gloating or other factors. In short, he was very unhappy. He was silent when a voice suddenly came. Where's Zora? He seems to have not appeared for a long time. He is carrying out Project Insight. Pierce said calmly, I haven't seen him for a while. Maybe you can ask him yourself. Forget it. The snakehead pondered for a moment and gave up his plan. Project Insight is the top priority. There is no need to delay his progress because of these trivial matters. Also, Pierce, it's time to start your aerospace carrier plan. Not enough. Pierce snorted coldly. The aerospace carrier requires a huge amount of manpower and material resources. I must get the assistance of the World Security Council to build it. Unless there is a major crisis event that makes those people see the necessity of building an aerospace carrier, the time required to build an aerospace carrier must be calculated in years. Project Insight is their attempt to control the world. They naturally know how much material resources this plan will require. Hearing what Pierce said, the snakeheads were silent. In the end, they did not discuss it too much, but returned to the topic. Pierce, you have always been in control of North America. This time, he appeared in your territory. It is your responsibility and obligation to stop him. I hope you can play your due role. The Continental Hotel is an important hub for us to maintain the rule of the dark world. No accidents can happen, so it's up to you. I know what to do. Pierce snorted coldly, unless I die, I won't let him succeed. TSK TSK TSK, the way you said that, I don't know whether I should hope you die or hope you live. Stark's teasing voice came again, and without waiting for a few people to speak, he stood up and walked out. I'm not interested in continuing with you. I have to go back to the European base. I have a lot of things to do. After all, I don't have a dedicated black slave to help me work. Several snakeheads withdrew their eyes from Stark and looked at Pierce again. Tell me, what are you going to do? Pierce looked at them and said nothing. In the room, from nodding acquaintances to close friends, the girl fell into a deep sleep after a night of hard work. Even the call from Zora did not affect her at all. Rubbing the treasure in his hand, Lincoln, with a smile on his face, was about to lie back on the bed when the knock on the door outside disturbed his mood. Sir, someone is looking for you. Someone is looking for me? Lincoln was a little surprised. Who? We can't confirm his identity. Hearing this, Lincoln became more and more surprised. He refocused his eyes and looked towards the hall. His sight penetrated through the layers of bricks and cement and saw the black man with an eye mask at a glance. Let him wait. Lincoln responded casually, reaching out to take out 2 gold coins from the table and throwing them through the crack of the door. Please help him order a black girl. Just say it's my treat. Let him have some fun. In the hotel, the gold coins as pass tokens can allow the hotel to do anything that does not violate their trajectory. Obviously, it is not against their rules to provide a service to another guest at the request of a guest. So, in the lobby, Nick Fury, who was pretending to read the newspaper, was waiting for not Lincoln, but a black-skinned girl dressed extremely sexy. Fury, the strange looks of the killers in the lobby, made him a little overwhelmed, and he looked at the hotel service staff in surprise. What does this mean? This is the service ordered by the guest you found. The waiter replied politely, he may not appear in a short time, so I found a partner for you to kill time. Hearing the waiter's words, Fury understood, but felt a little absurd in his heart. He is a level 10 agent and the director of SHIELD. Would he lack a woman? And this woman was paid by others? Fury felt that his thoughts were disrupted. In his plan, Lincoln might leave him alone for a while, or come to see him directly. In short, among so many expected scenes, there was no one in which he was waiting for Lincoln in the lobby with a girl in his arms, which was not in line with his style. According to the previous style, he should appear directly in Lincoln's room at this time. The reason why he sat here was, on the one hand, that he didn't want to break the rules of the neutral Continental Hotel, which would easily make more enemies. The other reason was that he was impressed by Lincoln's power. Originally, he could have waited here calmly, but now, looking at the sexy and attractive girl next to him, Fury suddenly had the urge to rush into Lincoln's room and ask him what was on his mind. Closing his eyes slightly, Fury took a deep breath, then looked at the waiter. "I don't need it. Let her go." "Are you sure?" "I am." Fury was about to nod without hesitation, but suddenly he thought of something and changed his tone. "Forget it. Let her stay. Thanks to the 700 starting coins rewarded by friends." Chapter 43 Fury. I would rather do nothing than make a mistake. Duh. A word with profound meaning. As a level 10 agent and director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Fury's ability to think far and wide seems to be innate, and he can often make correct associations and judgments. He was speculating whether the girl Lincoln ordered had other intentions, so he changed his tone. But obviously, he guessed wrong again. There are many advantages to being a Superman, such as super strength, super speed, super hardness, super endurance and other serious abilities. With the help of these powerful abilities, Lincoln's sins were finally defeated at noon, and his body and mind were purified from the inside out. He was very satisfied, the hotel was very satisfied, and the girl was also satisfied. Except for Fury, who was waiting downstairs with a gloomy face. Everyone was very happy. Putting the remaining gold coins into his pocket, Lincoln covered his body with a quilt, closed the door, and walked to the underground bar. At first glance, he saw Fury, whose face was as sullen as a big monkey, and the dark and shiny call girl beside him. "It seems that you really like the service I ordered for you. It's already noon, but you still want to keep her by your side." Lincoln ordered a glass of juice, leaned against the bar, and looked at Fury and the call girl next to him with interest. Hearing Lincoln's words, Fury immediately realized that he was overthinking and waved his hand to let the girl leave. Fury looked at his watch. "You made me waste a whole morning in this bar." No. The waste of time is just your personal behavior. It has nothing to do with me." Lincoln raised his index finger and shook it. "After all, I never asked you to come to me. Besides," Lincoln pointed at the juice in Fury's hand, "I only invited you to whore, but I didn't say I would treat you to juice. You have to pay for this glass of juice yourself." "Fury, you even treated me to whore, but it's not okay to have an extra glass of juice?" With a lot to say, Lincoln's sudden turn of events cut short Fury's face, which was originally as dark as a preserved egg, darkened even further. He took a deep breath, and then slowly said, "Let's talk alone." Lincoln looked around the bar with few customers, then looked at the empty corners around him, and spread his hands. "We have to talk alone." Seeing that Lincoln was unwilling, Fury felt that this negotiation might not have a good result. He took out some photos and a bill from his pocket. "This is the photo record of you damaging the street yesterday, and this is a repair bill you need to pay. Maybe you can choose a suitable time to pay off these bills." "Oh, this." Lincoln glanced at the long list of bills and pushed it back to Fury. "I have already negotiated with that screw general. As compensation and labor fees, he will give me a building worth $190 million in Manhattan. As for these bills, he will also bear them together. You can go to him to reimburse first. If he disagrees, you can come to me again, and I will have a good talk with him." "Talk? Does it mean to beat someone into submission with fists?" Fury stared at Lincoln. This thought flashed through his mind, and then he put the bill away. "Now that the compensation issue has been resolved, then next, we should talk about your identity." As he spoke, Fury took out another piece of white paper from his windbreaker pocket and placed it in front of Lincoln. "This is a file about you. Can you tell me what happened to you?" "No." Lincoln wanted to rebuke Fury with this sentence without any courtesy, but he suddenly thought of an interesting way to play. "Are you sure you want to know?" "Sure." "That's good." Lincoln nodded, stretched out his finger and casually drew a circle in the air. With a swishing sound, the magic with blue light and shadow effects opened a portal leading to the secret laboratory. Lincoln stretched out his hand, and when he took it back again, a cube emitting a blue luster had appeared in Lincoln's palm. "Laboratory scientist, what the hell? Where is a cosmic cube as big as mine?" "This is the cosmic cube." Looking at the familiar cube, Fury's expression finally couldn't remain stable, and he stood up. This should be stored in a secret laboratory. What did you do? The portal. Just a small trick related to space. Lincoln waved his hand indifferently. He held the cosmic cube calmly, and his mind moved slightly. The blue energy lines flowed out of the cube and turned into wisps of ethereal blue that enveloped the two. The Infinity Stones have incredible abilities. If you can master them thoroughly, you can directly reach the unique space inside them, different from the comic setting. The space inside different gems is different, and the space gem has an infinite and empty space inside. The endless nothingness can overwhelm all creatures that enter here. Fury's willpower is very strong. Even in this empty space, he can hold on for a while, but as a human, he can only hold on for a while. A moment later, Fury was sweating profusely. After returning from the void space, that was enough to destroy the will of living things. His heart was beating violently, and recalling the void space, that was much more terrifying than the small black room. He felt that he seemed to understand something. Did you go here during the years you disappeared? Yes. Lincoln nodded, reopened the portal, and put the cosmic cube back. Laboratory scientist, huh? Why is it back again? Waving his hand to close the portal, Lincoln looked at Fury with a smile. Actually, that's a good place. If you can keep your sanity and self-esteem there, you may be able to master it. Master it? Like you just did? Fury stared into Lincoln's eyes, as if he wanted to verify whether what he said was true or not. That space is a test. Lincoln, who had a meticulous control over his body, said without a single flaw, you can get out of it through it, otherwise you can only die in it. So, you have been in it all those years you disappeared? Not entirely. Lincoln shrugged casually. I was only in there for a period of time that almost drove people crazy, and then I came out and found a way back not long ago. It didn't kill me, but made me stronger. Do you want to be as strong as me? No. Recalling the gnawing sense of emptiness again, Fury shook his head and refused. He, a level 10 agent, couldn't hold on, and it was estimated that no one in the entire shield could succeed. And he didn't believe those agents. If what Lincoln said was true, it would only be a bad thing for those agents to pass the test and become the second Lincoln. So, Fury would rather do nothing than make a mistake. Chapter 44. 3 more. Everything Lincoln said to Fury was nonsense, but so what? The upper limit of humans and even all creatures on Earth determines that they cannot perfectly control the space gem, let alone enter the space inside it. Unable to disprove what Lincoln said, Fury can only take it as a true letter. After all, Lincoln took him in to experience it personally. If Fury doesn't believe it, then he is not suspicious, but paranoid. Fury is not paranoid. On the contrary, after only a short moment of hesitation, he accepted the facts described by Lincoln. Giving up the in-depth exploration of Lincoln's experience and Lincoln's ability over the past few years, Fury continued, I will find a way to restore your identity to a usable state. No need. Lincoln raised his hand to interrupt him. Let the past identity go. I should use a new identity to welcome and enjoy this new era. Fury stared at Lincoln, and after a moment, he nodded slightly. Okay. Lincoln was not worried that the identity created by Fury and the identity forged by Zora would conflict. Zora's artificial intelligence identity is not there to be seen. Few things that happened in the SHIELD network can escape his monitoring. The final result can only be that Fury creates a qualified identity for him, and Zora gives him another impeccable identity. There is nothing wrong with this. After solving these insignificant little problems, Fury finally shifted the topic to his real intention. Lincoln, I need you to join us to defend world peace. It's none of my business. Lincoln said disdainfully, if you really want to maintain world peace, I suggest you rush into the White House and Capitol Hill and kill all the people there, and the world will be peaceful immediately. If there is no peace at that time, you can come to me again. At that time, I will be happy to send those who are unwilling to peace to see God. What do you think? Hit the point. Fury felt that his heart was stabbed hard. Lincoln's proposal can be said to have hit Fury's soft spot. Without the perspective of position, Fury clearly knows which countries and groups in the world are the real obstacles to peace. He also knows that Lincoln's words are essentially correct. But the problem is, Fury can't do it. and since Fury is unwilling to sacrifice himself for the maintenance of world peace, he naturally cannot persuade Lincoln to sacrifice himself. All the basis for persuasion has been fundamentally disintegrated. After all, it is not reasonable to ask others to sacrifice when you are not willing to sacrifice yourself. If a normal person faces such accusations and kidnapping, he may only be angry, but Lincoln is different. He will not be incompetent and furious. He can smash the kidnapper into a pulp in front of everyone. Lincoln's temper has been fully demonstrated when dealing with Hulk and Abomination. Fury, who has personally experienced the Void, knows that the oppressive environment will make people extreme. Fury knows that for people like Lincoln, persuading them to be good is useless and will only make people impatient. He can only hope that Lincoln will keep the bottom line and not stand with those villains. Judging from the current behavior of asking people to find women, Fury believes that Lincoln is still under control. This may be the only good news he can confirm so far. I don't know whether I should feel happy or sad. Fury, whose persuasion plan failed, did not ask more questions about some of the things Lincoln revealed. He needs to go back and sort out his thoughts before he can determine the next plan of asking questions. After refusing to pay for the glass of juice, Fury, who was sure that the Continental Hotel would not dare to touch him, forcibly left the hotel, leaving the silent bartender looking at the empty glass. At this time, the eyes that had been coveting Lincoln since the appearance of the cosmic cube became more naked. Money can move people's hearts. For these killers who lick blood on the knife edge, as long as the benefits are big enough, risking their lives is a daily thing. You can't expect them to be smart enough to retreat. Moreover, as the night passed, many people already knew that Lincoln was the new killer who dared to use God as his code name. Maybe the memes Lincoln showed in the bar were enough to be called a miracle, but those killers firmly believed that there is no invincible person in this world, only people whose weaknesses have not been discovered. Lincoln, you are right, but you have to add one sentence: there are invincible supermen in this world. Lincoln thought he was a good person who didn't take advantage of others for free. After leaving the money for the next few days' accommodation and whore money, looking at the pitiful gold coin, Lincoln couldn't help but sigh and patted the bar. Let me ask you something. Do you know how to get gold coins? It's very simple. There are 3 ways. The bartender stopped what he was doing. The first is to rob other killers of their gold coins. The second is to accept missions from the Continental Hotel. The third is to accept missions from other people. For most people, the second is a more reliable and convenient method, but you. The bartender looked at the other killers. Maybe you can bring back more gold coins by using the first method when you leave the hotel. Not bad. A very reliable suggestion. Lincoln laughed and threw the only remaining gold coin on the bar. I'm very satisfied with your answer. Here is a tip for you. Thank you, sir. The bartender was very happy to receive the gold coin. This thing is of great value. After leaving the hotel, Lincoln passed by the front desk on his way out. Even though a night and a morning had passed, the old acquaintance Sharon was still there to greet Lincoln. Taking out the remaining few gold coins from his pocket, Lincoln pointed at the table. Extend your stay and add an hour. Okay, sir. Sharon nodded, handed over the gold coins, and then said, with the remaining money you bought yesterday, you can stay for 7 days. A week? That's about right. Lincoln nodded and was about to leave the hotel, but he stopped again, after looking at the killers who were gathering around him. If you have time, can you help me find 3 more? One is oriental and gentle, one is western and hot, and one is dark-skinned with less thick lips. I heard that their skin is more delicate and feels more unique. I want to try it. As for money, Lincoln pointed to the crowd behind him. I'll give it to you after I find it from them. Sharon, looking at Lincoln, Sharon was speechless for the first time in his life. He was surrounded by a group of killers, but he still had the mind to find 3 more beauties with different styles. Sharon even suspected that Lincoln was a pervert in his previous life. 4 women, wouldn't he be unable to get out of bed all day? Too outrageous. This kidney function is really enviable. Chapter 45. People die for money. Sharon didn't say anything. Lincoln just assumed that he had acquiesced, waved his hand, and pushed open the door and walked out. Fighting at the hotel gate was too unethical, so the assassins who had been waiting for a long time didn't follow Lincoln until his back slowly walked into the street at the corner. In the Continental Hotel, the assassins who knew little about Lincoln had an unusually keen sense of the environment. They looked at Lincoln, who had been surrounded by the assassins, and couldn't help shaking their heads. He's dead. In this case, even if the night demon comes, he will die here. Hearing this, someone next to him interrupted and said, "If the night demon hasn't retired yet, would you dare to say what you just said?" "What do I have to say?" The assassin blushed and wanted to argue, but suddenly he calmed down. Killers and assassins have always been very dirty. Who knows if someone in this group is secretly recording? If the night demon hears this, it will be no fun. As expected, seeing that he didn't say anything, the others showed a trace of disappointment on their faces and looked at Lincoln again. "Do you want to make a bet and guess how long he can last?" "Not for long." A killer sneered. "For a fool like this who dares to use a codename like God right after he came out, he will definitely be killed in 10 minutes. I find it strange that so many people are chasing him just because of a codename. Don't you know?" One person replied, "The hotel has a mission. Kill him and the reward is $5 million US. $5 million. Why don't you go? I just finished one. Can't I relax?" After saying so much, "Do you want to bet?" "Bet. $20 US. Bet he will finish in 3 minutes." 50. 10 minutes. The crowd gradually gathered, and Sharon did not stop or join, but opened the hotel's special service page and chose from it. In an inconspicuous alley outside the hotel, Lincoln, who was originally wandering aimlessly, stopped walking. He looked around and looked up. The alleys that were usually deserted were now full of killers with naked killing intent. The $5 million big order was enough to make these killers compete for business. However, they were not fighting for any credentials, but who could kill Lincoln first? Lincoln's emotions were not turbulent. He even used perspective to look at the pockets of these people. After a glance, his face immediately fell. "Damn, you idiots can only survive by eating gold coins? You dare to come out with only this little gold coins on you? You are simply impatient to live." Lincoln's strange words made the killers sneer on their faces, but as they laughed, the smile gradually disappeared and turned into uncontrollable fear, because they saw Lincoln's eyes glowing. "Go to hell." Lincoln's face was full of arrogant smiles, and thousands of degrees of hot eyes bloomed from his eyes. Wherever his eyes passed, no living creature could escape. One after another, the chopped bodies fell to the wet ground. The remaining killers had completely realized that the $5 million orders were not easy pie, but a deadly trap. They were terrified and turned around and fled without any attack. However, facing Lincoln, who had released the killing ban, any action was ridiculous and futile. One after another, the bodies were left behind by him. No survivors could reveal any information about him. Everyone died in it. To deal with these artillery fire without any characteristics, Lincoln did not even play with them. Decisive killing was the right choice. After a moment, he reached out to take the gold coins from the air and felt the slightly heavy weight coming from his pocket. Lincoln's face showed a slight smile. Turning to leave the alley, Lincoln put the gold coins in his hand on the counter and looked at Sharon. "How is it? Have you made your choice?" "I have already made my choice, and I need your final confirmation." Sharon put the gold coins away and then showed some pictures and videos. "Is it okay?" "Very good. Very good." Looking at the beauties that he could only see in short videos before, Lincoln's eyes became brighter and brighter. "Your aesthetics are very good. I like it. I like it." Sharon smiled and confirmed, "They will go to your room soon. I wish you a good time." Lincoln waved his hand and returned to his room. It must be said that the quality of beauties now is indeed much higher than that of the Republic of China, at least in terms of height and figure. Lincoln is a person who pays great attention to enjoying life, and beauties are a very important part of it. He doesn't mind enjoying it. After finishing his business, Lincoln returned to the room and ignored those killers who were not in his eyes, but those killers could not ignore Lincoln's existence. From the moment Lincoln walked into the alley to the moment screams came from inside, and then everything calmed down, the whole process took less than 3 minutes. Seeing Lincoln walk out of the alley unscathed, they could not imagine what had happened inside. Driven by curiosity, someone finally started to walk towards the alley, but when they saw what was inside the alley clearly, they were stunned. The debris everywhere was all the debris of bodies that were directly cut off by the high temperature heat vision. Every face was filled with deep fear and disbelief, and there was still a smell of coke in the air that had not yet dissipated. The visual and olfactory shocks came together, and even the killer who had done many tasks felt a little uncomfortable in his stomach at this time, as if the things in it would surge out in the next moment. In less than 3 minutes, all the killers were killed, some of whom were still on the high-hanging ladder. They had no idea how Lincoln did it. Looking at the mess on the ground, they could only vaguely see a brutal shadow ruthlessly crushing everyone. The desire for life at this moment suddenly overcame the greed for money and curiosity about the unknown. They looked at each other, shut their mouths tacitly, and then silently went to the hotel to book a room, carrying all their belongings, and leaving New York overnight. They no longer compared Lincoln with anyone else, because the strength Lincoln showed was already unique. Now they just want to run far away. The farther away from this ghost place the better. The sky-high reward is still posted on the website of the Continental Hotel, but after seeing the tragedy in the dark alley, most people chose to give up. But there is never a shortage of brave people in this world. Hell's Kitchen, an unmarked area in New York City. At his feet was a corpse with his skull cut open by a playing card, bleeding profusely on the ground. Bullseye held a mobile phone in his hand, staring closely at the name displayed on it, and the long string of rewards behind the name, and grinned. Not bad. Chapter 46 Bullseye, here I come. S.H.I.E.L.D. Pierce's office. Although the position of director has been handed over to Fury, Pierce still has extremely high authority and status within S.H.I.E.L.D. In addition to his identity as the head of the snake, everything that happened in the bar was already presented to Pierce before Fury left the Continental Hotel. Watching Lincoln casually open the portal to take the cosmic cube in the video, and watching him skillfully play with and control the azure energy of the cosmic cube, Pierce felt a chill all over his body. Fear of death is human nature, and the higher the position, the more so, and Pierce is no exception. The first time he saw the portal, Pierce felt that the Death Star was flashing above his head. Although the portal looked so small that only a hand could pass through, what did it matter? As long as it was bigger than a bullet, it would be enough to take his life. Let's take a look at it again. What is that? Exclamation mark. The cosmic cube that Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. have been studying for who knows how many years was easily held in one person's hand and played with. Isn't this scary enough? Exclamation mark. At this moment, Pierce's killing intent towards Lincoln reached its extreme. The Continental Hotel was only about money, but now, Lincoln's existence was about his life safety, which he absolutely could not tolerate. The killing intent was boiling, and the atmosphere in the room seemed terrifying. Pierce's assistant Sitwell was quietly in the corner, not daring to make a sound, for fear that Pierce would touch the overflowing killing intent through him. The great fluctuation of emotions made Pierce's face slightly red, and he calmed down after a moment. He glanced at Sitwell, who was standing quietly beside him, and said, "I don't care what method you use, make this guy disappear without exposing us." Hearing Pierce's words, Sitwell's heart was suddenly bitter, but facing Pierce's sharp eyes, he dared not say a word, and could only nod. I will." After that, under Pierce's terrifying gaze, he hurriedly left Pierce's office. The elderly Pierce lay back in the loose chair and took a long breath, as if this could ease his emotions, but the quiet situation did not last long, and a new piece of information was sent over. Without being at the scene, it was difficult for ordinary killers to know what happened in the dark alley next to the Continental Hotel, but the power of Hydra was strong enough. Before the group of killers from the Continental Hotel had time to pack their bags and run away, the photos and videos of the bodies in the dark alley had been neatly placed on the desk of Pierce of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agency. There was no violent aesthetics on the miserable corpses, only naked blood and disgust. If the burnt black of a corpse with a hint of flesh red broken ends was not enough to make Pierce look ugly, then the pile of corpses in the dark alley would be enough to make anyone feel uncomfortable. Fuck. First, he opened the space door casually, then mastered the cosmic cube, and now killed a group of professional killers in just 3 minutes with unknown means. Under tremendous pressure, Pierce's emotions got out of control for the first time. In the office, looking at the hideous picture, Pierce cursed. It seemed that he was trying to relieve the fear in his heart, or he was just angry. Lincoln had not had any direct contact with this high-ranking snakehead, but it was enough to make Pierce feel suffocated. If Lincoln's existence made Pierce feel uneasy and afraid, it was a headache and helplessness for Sitwell. Looking at the file in front of him that recorded information about Lincoln, Sitwell felt that his bald head was burning and smoking. He was scratching his head and meditating, but he couldn't think of any good way to make Lincoln disappear. Especially after seeing the video of the abomination that could resist the rocket launcher being hammered into a dead dog by Lincoln, Sitwell exclaimed outrageous and gave up the idea of killing Lincoln by conventional means. The more he understood Lincoln in detail, the more Sitwell was horrified by the power Lincoln possessed. Until the end, Sitwell began to ponder and wonder if he had sinned against his immediate boss Pierce at some point. Assigning such a task that is obviously not something a human can accomplish to himself. Are you planning to kill him? Exclamation mark. Sitwell is a loyal Hydra, but he feels that he can change his mindset. For example, find a way to persuade Lincoln to join Hydra and then change his boss, or bribe Lincoln and let him disappear for a while. A frontal attack is no longer feasible. Sitwell decided to save the country in a roundabout way. As for the respected boss Pierce, sorry, they may not be very familiar with each other now. After determining the direction of the action plan, looking at the task given by Pierce, Sitwell suddenly felt that this did not seem so difficult to accomplish. Hydra is plotting a new round of plans against Lincoln. On the other hand, Bullseye is also very excited when he sees the bounty missions in the Continental Hotel Killer Network. He said that he was working under Kingpin, but in fact he had a certain degree of freedom. In his spare time when helping Kingpin, Bullseye occasionally looks for some suitable targets in the Killer Network to practice his skills. Just like now, looking at Lincoln's name worth $5 million, Bullseye's eyes are full of excitement. Following King Coin, the gangster boss in New York and even the whole United States, Bullseye's information channels are naturally not weak. He easily determined that Lincoln, who was worth $5 million, was the newbie who dared to call himself God on the Killer Network. Although Bullseye did not think that Lincoln had the ability of God, the mentally ill Bullseye did not care. He just wanted an object to practice his skills and help him achieve the small goal of killing God. As for the $5 million, it was just a small bonus, and he did not care about it. Stepping over the pool of blood on the ground, Bullseye showed a wicked smile at the corner of his mouth, playing with special playing cards in his hand, looking far away in the direction of the Continental Hotel. Kingpin had some things to do recently, which meant that Hell's Kitchen would become peaceful for a while, and Bullseye felt that he had enough time to find some fun. After determining the target, without any hesitation, Bullseye left Hell's Kitchen and arrived at the Continental Hotel in a short moment. He pushed open the door and walked into the hotel lobby that he almost never walked into, looking at the decoration of the hotel unscrupulously. At this moment, Charon's eyes narrowed when he saw Bullseye. He quietly reached out and pressed a special button under the counter, which was a treatment only for distinguished guests. After pressing the button, Charon felt relieved. The next moment, Bullseye's voice suddenly appeared in his ears. I saw you. You can't escape my eyes. But it doesn't matter. You are not my target today. My target is the one named Lincoln. Charon stared at Bullseye and said, no violence is allowed in the Continental Hotel. This is the rule, unless you want to be hunted down by everyone. Chapter 47 Have fun. Bullseye is a mentally ill person with outstanding abilities. This is something that everyone agrees on, whether it is Kingpin or the Doctor. This kind of lunatic with outstanding strength is not something that ordinary people can control. So Bullseye is also a very powerful weapon in Kingpin's hands. A weapon that is enough to make the Continental Hotel in New York feel terrified. But it's just fear. The Continental Hotel is so powerful that it can collide head-on with Kingpin. Bullseye, who is still within the boundaries of ordinary people, can be completely eliminated if it is really necessary. Kingpin knows this, so he restrains Bullseye from having a head-on conflict with the Continental Hotel. Bullseye also knows this, so his recklessness in this hotel will only happen verbally and will not be put into practice. He is a mentally ill person, but he is not a fool. He still has basic cognition and thinking. Charon stared at Bullseye quietly. Bullseye didn't care about it. He just threw down a few gold coins and pointed to the phone inside. Tell that guy to come out and die. I might make him feel better. Don't you know what happened in the dark alley? Dark alley? Bullseye frowned, a little confused. He was in a hurry on the way and didn't have time to check his phone, so he didn't know the news of the dark alley. Seeing Bullseye like this, Charon immediately had a clue in his heart. Without hesitation, he picked up the phone and pressed the connect button. Hello, someone is looking for you. Someone is looking for me. This is endless, right? They are lining up to die. As he said, he hung up the phone, looked back at the few people who had already blown up the truce sign on the giant bed, shook his head, and put on his clothes. You rest first, wait for me to come back. Walking out of the room and closing the door, Lincoln's clothes and expression instantly became upright. In the lobby, Charon's extra question made Bullseye realize that something seemed wrong. He immediately became alert and began to try to understand what happened in the dark alley. However, a whole time had passed since Lincoln slaughtered the 4 women in the dark alley. Anyone who knew about the dark alley incident had already avoided it, as if it were a plague. Even those who did not leave would never dare to say a word about it, just pretending to know nothing. The more people he asked, the more Bullseye felt that something was wrong. Looking at Charon's calm eyes, he knew that he might have been a little careless. But carelessness is carelessness. Even if he realized that things had changed, Bullseye still didn't think Lincoln could escape from him. The existence of Abomination and Hulk was a scandal of the military. Coupled with the existence of Lincoln, the news about them was strictly blocked. Under the joint blockade of Hydra, SHIELD and the military, Bullseye didn't know this top secret at all. Supervillains don't exist. Naturally, superhero-like characters don't exist. In the normal range of the Marvel world, Bullseye is actually at the top level. This is the conclusion he came to after experimenting with one life after another. Bullseye might not be able to withstand the random gunfire, but he was confident enough in his ability to fight in a one-on-one duel. As long as he could see the target, he would definitely win. Bullseye stayed because of his strong self-confidence and mental illness, standing on the sidewalk outside the Continental Hotel waiting for Lincoln to appear. Lincoln was very upset about the people who disturbed him, but when he saw Bullseye, the situation changed a little. Those cannon fodder level killers were not worth his time, but Bullseye was different. Not to mention the person behind him, Kingpin. Bullseye's bug-like ability to hit whatever he pointed at was enough for Lincoln to spend some time playing with him. Without paying attention to Charon's reminder, Lincoln pushed open the door and walked out. At the moment he stepped out of the hotel door, a sharp light suddenly flashed in the eyes of Bullseye, who was as quiet as a statue. The arms that were hanging quietly on both sides of the body suddenly waved, bursting out with terrifying power and speed like a soft whip. With talent and training, his 5 fingers flexibly ejected 2 playing cards, which spun rapidly and slashed towards Lincoln like a cutting blade. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The playing cards cut through the air with a sharp sound of wind, and Bullseye couldn't help but smile. The speed of the playing cards he fired with special techniques was comparable to that of bullets, which was simply beyond the reaction of ordinary people. However, at the moment, when the bullet that was enough to cut through bones touched Lincoln's forehead, Lincoln, who was originally stupefied, suddenly moved. Just like the script, there was no extra movement at all. He just tilted his head slightly, and the 2 playing cards rushed through his cheeks with the sound of wind, and pierced the high-strength glass behind Lincoln. The special playing cards failed to penetrate the high-strength glass of the Continental Hotel, and the weapon that Bullseye prepared for himself was held in Lincoln's hand. Seeing this scene, Bullseye's eyes widened. First time. It was the first time he saw someone dodge his playing cards with extraordinary reaction and speed. Bullseye's body couldn't help but tremble. This was not because of fear, but excitement. The excitement of meeting an equally matched opponent. Killing those rubbish who had no power to fight back could satisfy his need for killing, but a strong man like Lincoln could inspire something hidden in his blood and consciousness. The smile on Bullseye's mouth froze at first, then became more and more arrogant, until it finally grew completely. His eyes were locked on Lincoln like a radar, and with a slight movement of his 10 fingers, more playing cards were grabbed in his hands from invisible places like magic. With the playing cards clamped between his fingertips. The playing cards with colored patterns were like flying knives engraved with numbers. Before they were used, they had already locked onto Lincoln. "You satisfy me very much, so I will have a good time with you." Bullseye looked at Lincoln, smiled evilly, and shook his arms. With a whoosh, it was almost impossible to see the movements in his hands. One by one, the playing cards rushed out in all directions along different trajectories. After arriving at a certain point, they instantly changed, and knelt down, and flew towards Lincoln. Bullseye threw the cards one by one like flowers scattered by a fairy. The colors printed on the cards flickered in the sun, full of blood. What a coincidence. Surrounded by countless sharp edges, Lincoln remained unhurried, with a smile on his face. "I thought so too." Chapter 48. Why? In the Marvel Universe, supervillains have never really disappeared. Starting from the Red Skull during World War II, all kinds of supervillains have never withdrawn from the stage of history, but they have never been active in the eyes of the public. Bullseye is one of them. He has incredible throwing ability, and any inconspicuous object can be released with potential destructive power in his hands. Using an ordinary card to cut someone's throat, or throwing a toothpick to kill someone, things that ordinary people can't do, are just routine operations for Bullseye. Top fighting and gun skills, coupled with extraordinary throwing ability, Bullseye can easily kill anyone who appears in his sight with incredible means. Until he met Lincoln. The specially made playing cards fluttered in the air like butterflies, and the sharp edge that was enough to cut human bones was hidden under the appearance. It looked gorgeous, but it was actually deadly. The playing cards rotated in the air and drew a beautiful arc, like a knife hook on the net, cutting Lincoln from all directions. The sharp edge cuts the air with a whizzing sound, and it sounds like music under Bullseye's careful adjustment. Impeccable. This is Bullseye's evaluation of the move he has developed. Surrounded by sharp edges on all sides, in his opinion, Lincoln's only fate is to be cut into a fragmented impressionist masterpiece by the cards. Every move is a sure kill, and Bullseye doesn't seem to have any idea of having fun, but in his opinion, creating masterpieces is entertainment. "Is this your limit?" Lincoln looked at Bullseye calmly, and shook his head gently. "It seems that throwing is not suitable for you, so use a gun." As he said, his steps moved slightly, as if he was humiliating Bullseye, and his body always rubbed against the sharp edge of the poker to dodge. The movements were elegant like dancing, and Lincoln showed Bullseye what it was like to walk on the tightrope on the tip of a knife. The sharp edge of the poker cut the wall, and cut through the cement. The power hidden in the card was released to the fullest, but it did not pose any threat to Lincoln. How is it possible? How is it possible? Seeing that the moves he had created with his experimental subjects were so easily avoided by Lincoln, Bullseye's eyes were full of disbelief. He roared, and then his 5 fingers linked together, and more hidden weapons were launched by him in a unique way. Pokers that drew a beautiful arc, flying knives that pierced the air straight, or other strange hidden weapons that rolled in the air. Like a fairy scattering flowers, Bullseye took out a lot of hidden weapons from unimaginable places on his body and threw them out, and he threw the hidden weapons alone to create a scene that covered the sky and the sun. A large group of black shadows shuffled through, either attacking by force or by surprise, and launched the most violent offensive against Lincoln from all kinds of unexpected angles. Bullseye's eyes were fixed on Lincoln, and the madness flashing in his eyes seemed to want to completely dismember and devour Lincoln. The movements in his hands became more and more swift and fierce, and the frequency and speed of throwing hidden weapons became faster and faster. Countless cold lights flickered in the air like stars, but Lincoln, who seemed to be in danger, walked along the edge of the knife without getting hurt. This almost provocative behavior of walking along the edge of the knife made Bullseye's eyes burst. When he was angry, his killing intention towards Lincoln was much stronger than any time before. Too slow, too slow. Too slow. Lincoln danced in front of Bullseye and kept talking. "Is this the strength of the top killer, Bullseye? It's just this little. I thought it would be so powerful. If that's all, then I'm sorry. I may not have extra time to play house games with you. The women in my room can consume my energy more than you." "Shut up." Hearing Lincoln despise himself and compare himself to a prostitute, the anger in Bullseye's heart erupted like a volcano. Tactics? No tactics. Like a metal storm with full firepower, he threw all the hidden weapons on his body at once. In an instant, more cold lights almost formed a dense net that blocked the time in front of Lincoln, but it was still not enough. Lincoln stepped lightly a few times and broke free from the encirclement of the knife light at a speed that was almost teleporting, and then looked at Bullseye, whose mental state had completely changed. Is this all you can do? I can kill him. I can kill him. Bullseye didn't say anything, but just stared at Lincoln, and the chaotic voice in his mind kept ringing. He is very fast, so fast that he can dodge all the hidden weapons, but his body must still be an ordinary person, otherwise there is no need to dodge my attack. As long as I can hit him, as long as I can hit him once, I can hurt him, make him bleed, and then slowly drain all his blood. Once is enough. Mental illness prevented Bullseye from becoming a normal person, but this disease helped him to think about the unfinished things at this time. His body still threw out the hidden weapons mechanically like a machine, but the hidden weapons, that originally seemed a little messy due to rage, now became full of rules. He was guiding and testing Lincoln's position, and trying to deliver a fatal blow at the last moment. The blade became more and more targeted, until a bright silver light pierced Lincoln's eyes, and a gunshot sounded along with it. As a master of throwing, he took the initiative to use a gun when his hidden weapons were not used up. You can imagine what kind of situation Bullseye has been forced into. Seeing his obsession, Lincoln did not dodge the bullet that he could have easily dodged, but turned into a sculpture and stared at the part of himself that was hit by the bullet. Seeing Lincoln motionless, Bullseye, who was on the verge of mental collapse, finally showed a crazy smile on his face. He moved his hands and more gunshots rang out. Go to hell. Go to hell. Ha 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 ha. The tinkling sound of the shell hitting the ground was covered by his wild laughter, but just when he was crazy about his masterpiece, Lincoln moved. He reached out and took the bullets that were fixed in the air by the BO force field one by one, and then looked at Bullseye with interest. Is this the full strength of the throwing master? With a gun? Looking at Lincoln, who was safe and sound, the smile on Bullseye's face rose. His face was full of confusion and puzzlement, and his body was stiff in place. Why are you okay? I clearly hit it. Oh, you're right, you did hit it, but it's a pity that the power is a little bit smaller. While speaking, Lincoln made a slight gesture with his thumb and index finger. The slight gap between the two fingers looked like there was no gap, but it seemed like a mockery of Bullseye. Why? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49, Adding Fuel to the Fire. Bullseye couldn't understand. He really couldn't understand. In his imagination, Lincoln should just be a person with extraordinary speed, just like he had extraordinary throwing skills. Just like he himself couldn't withstand the power of bullets, he thought Lincoln couldn't withstand the attack of bullets. For the last bullet, he carefully analyzed, studied, and predicted Lincoln's movement, and finally succeeded in letting the bullet hit Lincoln at that moment. But looking at Lincoln, who was safe and sound at this time, he was very confused. He wanted to rush up and grab Lincoln's collar and question him loudly, asking him why he could obviously block the bullet with his body, but he had to pretend that he couldn't block the bullet to tease him. It shouldn't be like this. He spent so much time training and exercising his talent, but the end result was that he was defeated like a clown. It shouldn't be like this. Bullseye's world collapsed. His body shook. He looked at Lincoln dully and asked a question he already knew the answer to. Can you block bullets? Yes. Then why did you hide from my hidden weapons before? Of course, it was to see how well you can use the hidden weapons, Lincoln said, turning his head to look behind him. In the battle that lasted for dozens of seconds, Bullseye threw not only the hidden weapons he carried, but also everything he could hold in his hands. Stones, glass, iron sheets, and even a wooden stick can be used as deadly hidden weapons. Bullseye's control over throwing ability is the strongest among humans Lincoln has ever seen. Just to see. Hearing Lincoln's answer, Bullseye's voice gradually became low, and his head slowly lowered. His expression could not be seen clearly because of the shadow. The silence lasted for a few breaths, and Bulsey raised his head again with bloodshot eyes, looking at Lincoln with violence in his eyes, and rushed towards Lincoln with a kick of his feet. "It's just for such a ridiculous reason. I can't accept it," he roared, clenched his 5 fingers into a fist and smashed it towards Lincoln. "I can't accept it. Can't withstand the blow. Are you crazy?" Lincoln looked at Bulsey, who was completely wrong, with a trace of pity on his face. He took a wrong step to avoid Bulsey's fist, and then pressed his backhand behind his head, and crashed into the wall beside him with a bang. Bang. The calcium-composed bones are no different from fragile eggshells in front of the hard reinforced concrete, and they completely shattered after a muffled sound. The broken skull fragments were mixed with red and white blood and brain matter, and Bulsey's body slowly slid down against the wall. Lincoln let go of the skull mixed with blood and brain matter in his hand, and let it fall to the ground, and be placed together with Bulsey's body, with a calm face, as if he had just killed a dispensable livestock. The blood splashing on the ground was like a blooming orchid, but unfortunately a corner was missing, and the direction where Lincoln was not stained red. Taking out a tissue to wipe off the dirt on his hands that did not actually exist, Lincoln turned and left the place where Bulsey was buried, looking thoughtfully in the direction of Hell's Kitchen. According to the usual routine of beating the younger one and then the older one, plus the status of a gangster boss, the next one to appear should be Kingpin, right? Should we go and deal with him in advance? Kingpin. Lincoln's words and deeds had the idea of nipping the trouble in the bud, but his body was very honest, and walked back to the hotel. This time, it was not just Sharon who was waiting at the counter, but there was also an old man in a linen windbreaker. Lincoln recognized him, Winston, the manager of the Continental Hotel in New York. In this hotel, as long as the people from the high table did not come, he basically had the final say. Even if the people from the high table came, he would have the strength to resist. It can be seen that this man must have been a ruthless man when he was young, otherwise he would not have been able to take down this hotel. However, he seems to have switched to civilian work now that he is old. Just like Fury, who has switched from the front line to civilian work as the director of Snake Shield at an unknown age. Winston originally came out to solve the trouble of Bulsey, but when he heard the gunshot, he knew that things might become simpler. When he saw Lincoln push the door in from outside, he had fully confirmed the death of Bulsey. Winston was very sure of Lincoln's style, because it took him a lot of effort to clean up the bodies in the dark alley before. When the gunshot sounded this time, he didn't believe that Bulsey could leave alive. Lincoln didn't come forward to speak, and Winston just watched Lincoln go upstairs, and then shook off his windbreaker, and pushed the door and walked out. A moment later, standing on the street, looking at the headless body at the foot of the wall and the skull that fell beside it, Winston and his assistant were silent. After a moment, he looked up and said sadly, "It seems that this newcomer is more irritable than we thought. Bulsey is dead, which is a good thing." Sharon said, "It's just that Kingpin might be very angry. He will be very angry, but what does it have to do with us?" Winston laughed and watched the scavenger pack up Bulsey's body and put it in a bag. "We didn't kill him. He just died outside the Continental Hotel by coincidence. If there is any relationship, he should thank me for asking the scavenger to send him Bulsey's body at my own expense, so that he can win people's hearts." Winston smiled, and his smile was very cunning, like an old fox in the world. "You can figure it out with your ass. Kingpin will never make enemies with Lincoln at this time. He will probably endure the killing of Bulsey, but that was before." When Winston asked the scavenger to pack up Bulsey's body and send it to Kingpin, things changed a little. He must let everyone know in a big way that Kingpin's capable subordinate Bulsey was killed, especially Kingpin's other subordinates. Winston didn't know whether Kingpin would choose to take revenge at that time, but this would definitely disgust Kingpin, and that was enough. The fact was, just as Winston had planned, Bulsey's body was seen by many people. Within a day, the entire black organization in New York City knew about Bulsey's death, and the news was still spreading. In the dim room, a strong and burly figure sat on the huge sofa. Kingpin looked at the body bag on the ground with a sullen look. Inside was the body of Bulsey with a smashed head and a piece of skull that was lucky enough to be preserved. He was very angry, not because of Winston's disgusting behavior of fanning the flames, which was very common in the underground society. Kingpin was angry that Bulsey did not act completely according to his will. He foolishly and presumptuously provoked a strong enemy and led to his own death. Then Kingpin lost a very useful tool and killer, which was really worth being angry about. Bullseye betrayed him. The atmosphere in the room was solemn, and Kingpin got up and left after a long time. Bullseye betrayed him, but he didn't intend to pursue Bullseye. There was no need to pursue the responsibility for a dead person without relatives. Kingpin planned to attribute Bullseye's death to his own stupidity, which would make those equally stupid subordinates behave themselves. Before he figured out Lincoln's origins, he was unwilling to be an enemy of Lincoln, even if the enemy was just a nation who looked easy to mess with. He was very cautious, otherwise he would have died by now. But just like Winston can add fuel to the fire, he can also add fuel to the fire and let others deal with Lincoln. Chapter 50, Elders Council, We Must Strike First. In the hotel room, Lincoln, who had worked hard all night, sat on the sofa and fell into deep thought. After 2 days of not doing his job, he finally remembered the purpose of coming to the Continental Hotel. He came here to take over the Continental Hotel, not to take care of the Continental Hotel's business. Damn, I can't do this next time. I almost forgot about my business, just because of 4 women. Lincoln despised himself in his heart, then stood up and walked out the door. Next time, at least 8. In the underground bar, Winston sat in his usual seat, tasting the wine and admiring the empire he built. Just when he was in a good mood, Lincoln walked over to him and sat down. He took Winston's collection of wine and poured himself a glass, then said, "Let's talk. What do you want to talk to me about?" Winston glanced at his treasured wine collection, and his eyes twitched uncontrollably. "I've kept the glass of wine you just poured for 5 years and I haven't been willing to drink it." 5 years. Lincoln smacked his lips. "It's still not long enough. If it's 50 years, maybe I can taste something special." As he said that, he drank the wine in the glass, then took out a token given to him by Schmidt during World War II and slapped it on the table. "Remember this?" Winston looked at Lincoln with some confusion. He reached out and picked up the token on the table and looked at it carefully, then shook his head slightly. "What is this?" Winston's answer was within Lincoln's expectations, but after really hearing the answer, he couldn't help but sigh. Reaching out to take back the exquisite token from Winston's hand, which did not look like a product from the World War II era, Lincoln spoke as if talking to himself. "Do you know the origin of the Continental Hotel?" Winston's expression changed slightly, and before he could speak, Lincoln continued, "In the past, there was a man who had the power to subvert everything, but unfortunately, he did not have the ability to resist me. In order to survive, he agreed to a request of mine to set up the Continental Hotel, and promised that I could regain control of the Continental Hotel at any time in the future with this token. I'll let him live, and although he died in the end, the Continental Hotel has existed for decades because of this. I really hope that some of you can still remember this agreement and promise, but now it seems that I think too much." Lincoln's tone was flat, but it made Winston shudder. He did not move at all, and there was not even a change in his eyes, until Lincoln put the token back in front of him, then stood up, patted his shoulder, and whispered in a low voice, "I know you are not the one who has the final say over the Continental Hotel, so take this token, and go find those who have the final say. I will give them 3 days, and they must all appear before me. After 3 days, kill." "No. Pardon." Winston could not see the expression on Lincoln's face, but the cold murderous intent revealed in those 3 decisive words made him tremble in his heart. He stared at the token on the table, as if it could make him ignore the huge pressure behind him. After a few minutes, Winston finally woke up from his dream and gasped for breath. A layer of fine sweat had appeared all over his body. He reached out and grabbed the token, and without caring to get up, he stood up and hurried to his office. Frightened by the pressure brought by Lincoln, Winston gritted his teeth. Damn it, how many things have those people at the high table concealed? Winston did not know the most original secret of the Continental Hotel, but as a picture of the token was submitted, the entire high table was shaken. The meeting was restarted, and the representatives of the 12 seats all appeared in the virtual conference room. How is it possible? It has disappeared for 60 years. How could it appear again? The president of the Brotherhood looked at the picture, his eyes full of doubt. This must be fake. Don't jump to conclusions so early, Sloan. Anthony, who looked old, but still in charge of the Italian mafia, said calmly, "Whether it is true or not, we just need to find someone to bring the thing over to verify it. Besides, compared to us, those elders need to worry more about this." Anthony's words made the entire high table quiet down. As he said, they who control the 12 seats at the high table are not actually the controllers of everything. Those elders who have extraordinary money, power, and status are the controllers of everything. As the saying goes, if the sky falls, the tall ones will hold it up. When they thought that the first decision to be made was made by the elders, the pressure in their hearts suddenly eased a lot. Everyone looked at each other and then tacitly passed the resolution to send the news of the reappearance of the token to the elders, who have been living in seclusion behind the scenes for many years. The elders were completely shocked as the picture was sent out through the network, including the deep desert, bustling cities, and islands in the vast sea. "Everyone, the token has appeared." Hashem, dressed in an Arab dress, said calmly, "Someone wants to use this token to take away everything we have built." "Ridiculous." An old man in a nightgown snorted coldly, "Send someone to kill him. He's in New York." A woman looked at the information in her hand, then looked at the fourth elder. "I remember that it seems to be your territory." Pierce, who had remained silent all the time, me. At *% and * Pierce thought he could stay out of the world by keeping silent, but the gazes of the remaining 3 elders made him know that he had to speak. Pierce watched Fury go to Lincoln, watched the assassin at the Continental Hotel go to Lincoln, and watched Kingpin's subordinate Bull C go to Lincoln. All the famous people in New York have gone to look for Lincoln, and now it's his turn. Being watched by several other elders who are equally powerful, Pierce cursed in his heart, but his face was calm. "I just found out that he is in New York now. So, what do you think? You decide." Pierce chose to retreat. "You make the decision, and I will support it, no matter what decision you make." The existence of Nazi made Hydra also shout and kill. Although Pierce represented Hydra as an elder, he usually kept silent. Today, his performance as usual did not make the others have any doubts. Pierce abstained, and the remaining 3 just looked at each other and decided how to act. Maybe they will have other dirty tricks in private, but on the surface, their attitude towards Lincoln has been consistent. A few minutes later, a resolution signed by several elders from the Council of Elders was sent to the high table. As this resolution was continuously issued, a must-kill mission against Lincoln was put on the top of the list. The Continental Hotel's bloodless rule was lifted, and all the consequences of assassination attempts against Lincoln would be forgiven. At this moment, almost all dark organizations around the world knew of Lincoln's existence and regarded him as a man who was doomed to die. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.